He just instinctively felt that since physical and magical attacks had no effect on Luke, it was very likely that Luke needed to attack a specific vital point in order to receive damage. However, things didn't go as planned. When Wang Yu's fingers poked Luke's neck, he didn't feel the corresponding attack. It was as if he had poked a piece of metal. There was no effect at all. Obviously, even if Wang Yu couldn't see, he could feel that this attack was ineffective. Of course, Wang Yu was a person who never gave up easily. Naturally, he wouldn't be discouraged just because of a single test. There were more than 180 Achilles heel and 275 vital points in a human's body. This was only a test of one of them. If he were to give up, he would have to test every single one of them. Just like before, Wang Yu still couldn't take the initiative to attack. However, after Wang Yu's 2 fingers poked Luke's throat, Luke's fist came smashing over again. Wang Yu smiled slightly and sidestepped Luke's fist. He then casually poked Luke's chest. Chest. Ineffective. Luke was infuriated when his attack missed again. He lifted his leg and kicked, but Wang Yu nimbly rolled behind Luke. She didn't even turn her head as she casually pointed at Luke's back with her back facing him. So, ineffective. In the end, Luke wasn't an agility boss. Moreover, he was only level 80. Facing an expert like Wang Yu, who was extremely agile and had extremely fast reactions, he was like a lion swatting a fly. Even if he had the strength of 1,000 kilograms, he couldn't use it at all. This feeling could only be described as sullen. Even though Wang Yu's attack didn't deal any damage to Luke, Luke was still infuriated. If it wasn't for the fact that he had to maintain his composure as a god king, Luke would have cursed out loud. In a fight between experts, the most taboo was to be impatient. It was important to be calm. Wang Yu was a veteran of hundreds of battles. After a few rounds, both his body and mind had gradually adapted to this high-difficulty fighting style. He was becoming more and more at ease. As for Luke, because he was a god king, he couldn't even touch the corner of his opponent's clothes. His mood became more and more chaotic, and his attacks gradually became disorderly. Killing a master with random punches only proved that the master's ability wasn't up to par. A martial arts grandmaster like Wang Yu's attacks had always been like seawater that could seep through any openings. At the start, Luke's fighting style was orderly, his offense and defense were appropriate, and Wang Yu still had to look for openings. At this moment, Luke, who had lost his fighting style, was full of openings. Facing such an opponent, if he didn't fight to the death, it would be a waste of his posture. As she moved, Wang Yu dodged all of Luke's attacks. Every time she dodged, she launched a precise counterattack at the same time. Energy C. Ineffective. Dantian. Ineffective. Below the ribs. Ineffective. The number of consecutive hits on Luke's head gradually increased. The connoisseur recognized the artistry, while the layman enjoyed the show. Although the people in the examination room couldn't understand how heaven-defying it was for Wang Yu to accurately hit Luke's vitals, they weren't blinded by Luke. Seeing Wang Yu repeatedly dodge Luke's attacks and counterattack, everyone, including Ma Longting, was dumbfounded. In fact, Luke's attacks weren't impossible to dodge. Although first-rate professionals couldn't deal with their opponents as easily as Wang Yu, it wasn't impossible for them to dodge. Since Wang Yu was the champion of the domestic professional league, it was reasonable for him to have this ability. But now that Wang Yu was blinded, he couldn't see his opponent's attacks at all. Under these circumstances, it was unbelievable that he could dodge all of Luke's attacks. Even Molly, who was very familiar with Wang Yu, was dumbfounded. She thought to herself, the charterer is actually this abnormal? Don't tell me he's using cheat. Ma Longting subconsciously looked at the monitoring data, but there was nothing unusual. At this moment, Wang Yu's tightly shut eyes suddenly opened. Blinding over. Chapter 1592. The blinded Wang Yu fought Luke with ease, but he was still on the defensive, and could only rely on his senses to dodge and counterattack. After the blinding ended, it was the same as Wang Yu's vision being unsealed. With his eyes closed, Luke was no match for him. Now that Wang Yu regained his vision, the result was obvious. Wang Yu, who could only attack passively, suddenly took the initiative. The frequency of his attacks also increased. Although Luke didn't gain any advantage over Wang Yu, he had the upper hand in the battle and suppressed Wang Yu. Now that Wang Yu took the initiative, Luke completely lost his last advantage. Luke, this old thing, couldn't even defeat the blind Wang Yu in close combat, let alone Wang Yu who had recovered to her peak state. Wang Yu switched from defense to offense. His attack speed was like a storm, and the angles of his attacks were even more tricky. It could be said that he was everywhere. Luke wasn't an agile boss, and he had such a large body. He was already full of openings, so how could he block Wang Yu's attacks? At that moment, Luke, who had been chasing after Wang Yu to attack her, was unable to retaliate at all. He could only rely on the holy light of God to block Wang Yu's continuous punches and kicks. At this time, Director Li also came over and said, "This kid must be cheating. Otherwise, why wouldn't Luke, who's a mage boss, use his skills instead of fighting with him? Should we check Luke's data?" Director Li stopped joking. Zhao Xinpei said, "Luke's data is monitored by the highest authority in the game. If there's anything wrong with him, the server will automatically close the scene. Don't tell me you don't know this?" Sure enough, Zhao Xinpei wasn't someone who was easy to deal with. With Ma Longting here, this kid didn't hide it anymore. Not only did he vent his usual grievances, but he also secretly revealed to Ma Longting that Director Li wasn't proficient in his work. For a senior manager of a game company's technical department to be inferior to a technician, this was a very strange situation. Being rebuked by Zhao Xinpei, Director Li could not help but be shocked. He quickly said, "Then tell me why Luke didn't use his skills." "Alright, don't talk anymore." Seeing that Director Li was making things worse, Ma Longting's face darkened. He waved his hand and said, "As an executive of the technical department, you really can't tell?" Why?" Director Li was confused. "Little Zhao, you tell him." Ma Longting's tone was somewhat angry. Not only did the technical department have to develop the game, but they also had to test the game. If they couldn't even detect the most basic abnormality, how did this guy become an executive? "That's because Luke's skills have been interrupted," Zhao Xinpei said, pointing at Wang Yu and Luke on the screen, then clicking on the slow-motion playback. Hearing this, Director Li immediately stared at the screen with wide eyes. As expected, as a God-tier BSS, Luke's IQ was also very high. The moment Wang Yu opened his eyes, Luke knew that Wang Yu was going to fight back, so he couldn't wait to raise his hand to use a skill. However, just as Luke raised his right hand, Wang Yu's left hand pulled up diagonally, directly grabbing Luke's wrist, and used a Ferocious Tiger Strike. Ferocious Tiger Strike was a grab skill. It could even break super armor. Although Luke had holy light to protect him, his hand was still pulled to the side by Wang Yu. At the same time Luke's skill was interrupted, Wang Yu's Thunder Stomp landed between Luke's legs. This position was commonly known as the crotch area. Obviously, Luke had an invincible state. Even a skill like Thunder Stomp couldn't damage him at all. However, Luke was kicked a few steps back by Wang Yu, and he broke free from Wang Yu's grab. Luke was a dignified god king. He also cared about his reputation. Being kicked in the crotch by someone was naturally infuriating. After breaking free from Wang Yu's grab, Luke steadied his body and started chanting again. For a boss of Luke's level, his words were already the law of the land. However, as soon as Luke opened his mouth, Wang Yu lowered her head and rushed in front of Luke. Her right hand formed a claw and passed through Luke's defense at an extremely tricky angle. She reached out and grabbed Luke's neck. Ga. Luke's chanting came to an abrupt end, and Wang Yu's left hand followed closely behind. Pa. With two crisp sounds, Wang Yu gave Luke two tight slaps, one on the left and one on the right. Roar! These two slaps directly caused Luke's hair to stand up, and his eyes were even about to spit fire. Through the screen, everyone could feel Luke's anger. Seeing Luke like this, Wang Yu revealed a satisfied smile. As the saying goes, to beat a god, first hit the face and then kick a god in the crotch. The reason why Wang Yu attacked Luke like this was because he wanted this effect. This was because Wang Yu knew that he didn't understand the mechanics of legendary bosses and normal monsters at all. Normal monsters didn't have AI, so attacking the crotch and slapping the face would only increase their aggro. In a one-on-one situation, the effect on the outcome of a battle was minimal. Luke was different. This old thing not only had high combat skills, but his AI was also very high. Although he was being suppressed by Wang Yu, from the looks of it, Wang Yu actually didn't have much of an advantage. After all, Luke had already died for a few rounds, and his health bar was still full. Moreover, this kind of boss's combat skills would grow during the battle. The more he fought, the more cunning he became. If this continued, Luke would probably slowly grow before his health dropped. The root of all this was Luke's high AI. To solve this problem, he had to lose his rationality. Anger was the most important emotion that affected rationality. Just as Wang Yu expected, after Luke was angered, both the strength and speed of his attacks increased a lot. However, because of the loss of rationality, although Luke's attacks were sharp, he completely gave up on defense. This way, the frequency of Wang Yu's attacks became even more frequent. Bang bang bang! Wang Yu's punches and kicks landed on Luke's body like a torrential storm. As Luke gave up on defense, Wang Yu's attacks were completely connected. Originally, Wang Yu's combo would only be 10 to 20 hits before he was forced to give up because of Luke's defense. However, the combo above Luke's head had reached 140 hits. Wang Yu had used his own actions to demonstrate what a textbook combo from a grandmaster of combat meant to everyone watching this battle. For a moment, the eyes of everyone in the assessment room were attracted by Wang Yu's powerful fighting style. Following Wang Yu's combo, everyone nodded rhythmically. No one dared to make a sound, for fear of interrupting this shocking operation. Chapter 1593. Seeing this, Ma Longting would no longer doubt whether Wang Yu was using cheat. After all, cheats could only modify data, not the player's skill level. Wang Yu's attacks were as smooth as flowing water, appearing and disappearing unpredictably. This kind of flexible way of completely suppressing the boss was something that even the developers of Rebirth could not simulate. How could this kind of unorthodox method be able to simulate? From Wang Yu's skillful movements, it was not difficult to see that this fighting style was already second nature to Wang Yu. It was definitely not something that could be achieved with cheat. For a player to have such skills, he was probably also a martial artist in real life. Wang Yu's attacks continued, and the sound of punches and kicks rang out continuously. Luke was beaten to the point of staggering, and the vital parts of his body were also hit by Wang Yu. But after so long, Luke's HP bar still did not decrease in the slightest. However, to Wang Yu's delight, although the punches and kicks did not reduce Luke's HP, the golden light on Luke's body gradually dimmed. Could it be, seeing the golden light on Luke's body dissipate, Wang Yu was slightly surprised. If he guessed correctly, the golden light on Luke's body also had a defensive limit. According to the general settings of the game, there were only two defensive limits to the magic shield effect. One was a damage limit, which meant that when the damage reached a certain level, the magic shield would shatter. The other was a number of attacks. As the name suggested, when the number of combo hits reached a certain value, the magic shield would shatter. When Wang Yu was blinding, most of his attacks were skills. Although the number of attacks was not high, the damage was not low. Luke had been hit for so long, but the golden light on Luke's body had not weakened. But now Wang Yu was using normal attacks, and the golden light on Luke's body was starting to dissipate. Clearly, Luke's defense limit was the latter. Thinking of this, Wang Yu finally realized Luke's fighting style. Delighted, he simply gave up on the combo of skills and used normal attacks that were more convenient for combo. 180 combo, 200 combo, 250 combo. As Wang Yu's combo count increased, the expressions on the faces of Zhao Xinpei and the others became more and more complicated. As a technician, he naturally knew how to break through Luke's defense. Normally, no one would want the most powerful boss designed by their company to be trampled to death so easily. However, now that their jobs were at stake, everyone hoped that Wang Yu could kill Luke. They were in a dilemma. 275 in a row. Finally, in the face of Wang Yu's attacks, Luke's sacred light of holiness reached the ascendant immortal stage. Bang! With a muffled sound, the holy light on Luke's body shattered and turned into a puff of golden smoke that rose into the air. Luke looked at the golden smoke in shock and cried out involuntarily, This light has disappeared." At the same time, he froze on the spot. Taking advantage of his weakness, Wang Yu took a step forward and got close to Luke's chest when he saw that Luke was stunned. He suddenly stretched out 2 fingers of his right hand. Poochie! Without missing a beat, Wang Yu inserted his finger into Luke's eye. 112454. A huge critical damage value floated up. Wang Yu revealed a gratified look. Damn, his damn defense has finally been broken. Without the protection of the holy light, Luke was just an undead without a physical body. His attack priority was also much lower. After being poked in the eye by Wang Yu, Luke's head tilted back slightly. At this time, Wang Yu had already circled behind Luke. With a rising dragon punch, he punched the back of Luke's head from the bottom up. 145554. As the attack was a vital point, this punch was another critical hit and once again caused Luke to lose his bearings. Wang Yu twisted his legs and twisted to Luke's side. He reached out and grabbed Luke's hair and pulled him down. At this time, Luke had already lost his balance. Being pulled by Wang Yu's grab skill, Luke could not resist and fell to the side involuntarily. In the blink of an eye, Wang Yu took the opportunity to lift her knee up and perform a knee rush. Boom! A special skill light flashed, and Wang Yu's knee landed heavily on Luke's temple. 331245. Knee rush was the strongest skill of all the Grandmasters of Combat, besides the awakening skills and ultimate skills. This knee attack directly dealt more than 300,000 damage. Although Luke was only level 80 and in a fragile soul state, as a weakened version of a top-level boss, he still had more than 10 million HP. Even so, after taking a hit from Wang Yu, Luke's health bar had obviously dropped by a large amount. Luke was miserable as an undead. He was not very strong in melee combat. He mainly relied on magic to deal with enemies. However, when he encountered an unreasonable person like Wang Yu, he could not use any of his magic. It felt like he was playing landlord with 2 kings and 4 2s in his hand, but his opponent had 3 aces and 4 aces in his hand. He could not even use a single card. What was sullen? This was King sullen. Of course, the people who were the most sullen right now were the technicians of the testing team. Luke was the most perfect boss designed by the designers. Even if Wang Yu was fighting a weakened version, his original design was still there. However, such a perfect design was being trampled on by a player who was not even level 70. Everyone felt like a designer who had worked overtime all night, only to be scolded by the client. Not only did they feel that their design had failed, but they were also full of doubts about life. Their confidence was thrown to the ground and smashed to pieces. Isn't this Luke too simple? Ma Longting asked, rubbing his chin. Simple? Stop joking. Everyone was devastated. However, the normal state of invincibility, as well as the disappearance of the 275 combo, had already put Luke in an invincible position. If this was simple, how could the other players play? It was obvious that the guy on the screen was too strong. Luke's invincibility only lasted for 30 seconds. In these 30 seconds, Wang Yu did not stop punching and kicking. By the time Luke's holy light gathered again, Wang Yu had taken out 30% of Luke's HP. With the experience from the first time, the rest was much easier. Faced with Luke, who had regained his holy light, Wang Yu kicked Luke's crotch, strangled, and stabbed his eyes. He first knocked Luke into a state of insanity, then followed up with a 275 combo. The holy light shattered, and Luke's HP dropped by another 30%. This repeated 3 times, and Luke's HP was beaten down to 10% by Wang Yu. This boss is so weak. According to the normal process, Luke should have gone berserk at 30% HP, but there was no reaction at 10%. Wang Yu let out a laugh that broke the hearts of all the designers. Chapter 1594. What's going on? Is this a scam? Wang Yu could not help but feel a little lost when he saw Luke's actions. They were all civilized people, and this was a game. Was there a need to do this? How could someone so old have no sense of civility? While Wang Yu was still in a daze, Luke's skin began to turn black. At the same time, Luke's health bar was rapidly recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. F***ck. I didn't know this could happen. Wang Yu was shocked. He extended his right hand and used Ferocious Tiger Strike in an attempt to interrupt Luke's recovery. However, when the attack landed on Luke, Wang Yu received a system notification. Current target cannot be attacked. Wang Yu froze on the spot. This is 2F** King Shameless. I've finally reduced Luke's health to 10%, but this bastard is already recovering his health. Moreover, his recovery cannot be interrupted. What a joke. Luke's health recovered faster and faster, and the black color on his body deepened. Finally, under Wang Yu's gaze, the originally sacred Luke turned black, and the aura on his body became extremely violent. May the darkness be with you. Luke smiled at Wang Yu, revealing a row of white teeth. Then, he grabbed his back with his right hand. Rip! There was an ear-piercing sound of bones breaking, and a long hair made of bone was pulled out of Luke's body. Luke was also a gangster when it came to pulling out bones from his own body. Whether it hurt or not, the visual effect was extremely shocking. Even someone as courageous as Wang Yu could not help but feel his back go numb when he saw this. Dark Luke. It's Dark Luke. Seeing Luke's transformation on the screen, Zhao Xinpei and the others' eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Dark Luke was Luke's ultimate form. In the game, this form could only be triggered when Luke felt despair. It was not easy to make someone as strong as Luke feel despair. The only way to trigger it was to fight Luke alone, and when Luke's health dropped to 10%, the challenger would not receive any damage. Who was Luke? The Radiant God King. In Rebirth, he was one of the strongest in the world and the only remaining God-tier legendary boss. His strength was unparalleled. Even a level 100 player wouldn't dare to provoke a God-tier boss like Luke without a team, let alone a solo fight. Not to mention, taking 10% of Luke's HP without taking any damage was simply a fantasy. From this, it could be seen how harsh the conditions to trigger Dark Luke were. Even if a player's level cap was set at level 200, no one would be able to trigger Dark Luke. Even the game designers had never thought that anyone would be able to defeat Dark Luke, because Dark Luke was an Easter egg that was impossible to trigger in the game. Who would have thought that this guy, whom even the designers had almost forgotten, would be released by a Grandmaster of Combat who hadn't even reached level 70? Oh my god, Dark Luke was able to activate with such harsh conditions. What else is he hiding from? If he really opens up level 200, won't he challenge the guards? Obviously, Ma Longting also knew about Dark Luke's existence. Seeing Wang Yu use Dark Luke's form, Ma Longting was also shocked. Level 200? There's no need for that. Zhao Xinpei said helplessly. This guy challenged the guards when he was level 40 or 50. What? The guards were all killed? Ma Longting said in horror. Not really. Zhao Xinpei wiped the sweat off his forehead. After a few rounds, he knew that he wasn't a match for him, so he ran away. That scared the hell out of me. Hearing Zhao Xinpei's words, Ma Longting couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. Meow, if this guy killed all the guards, perhaps this game wouldn't be able to hold him back anymore. Of course, Ma Longting was also thinking too highly of Wang Yu's abilities after seeing Wang Yu's performance just now. The reason why Wang Yu could suppress Luke was because Luke was currently only level 80, and he didn't have a physical body. If Luke was at the pinnacle of level 200, with his powerful attributes, no matter how good Wang Yu was, he wouldn't be able to last more than a few rounds. As for killing the guards, that was purely wishful thinking. Seeing Luke pull out his spear, Wang Yu subconsciously retreated a few meters. In this form, Luke was clearly in melee mode, and it was completely different from before. Against a melee boss, one had to know oneself and the enemy. If one didn't understand Luke's skills and blindly charged forward, it would be very easy to be caught off guard. Mortal! You know nothing about God's strength. Return to the dark abyss. While everyone was still in shock, Luke roared and swung his right hand. The spear in his hand immediately turned into a black light, flying at an extremely fast speed towards Wang Yu. Seeing this, Wang Yu hurriedly jumped back. Bang! In the instant that Wang Yu jumped back, the huge spear heavily stabbed into the ground where Wang Yu had just been standing. If not for Wang Yu's quick escape, perhaps this spear would have pierced a hole in Wang Yu. So fast. Seeing how terrifying the spear in Luke's hand was, he couldn't help but feel slightly shocked. After transforming into Dark Luke, the boss's attack speed had obviously increased significantly. Previously, although Luke's attack speed was also very fast, it was still within Wang Yu's ability to deal with it. Now, however, it was clearly beyond Wang Yu's ability. Fortunately, Luke had been far away, giving Wang Yu time to dodge. If the spear had been closer, it was unknown whether or not Wang Yu would have been able to dodge it. Huh? Stubborn reptile! Seeing that his spear had missed, Luke was slightly stunned. He immediately stretched out his left hand, and a black light pulled on the spear's handle. At the same time, his entire body collided with Wang Yu. Luke's charge was much more powerful than that of a warrior or a knight. A deep trench was formed in the ground, and in an instant, he had rushed in front of Wang Yu. In the nick of time, Wang Yu suddenly rolled to the right, barely dodging Luke's attack. Luke reached out to pull out the spear from the ground, and swung it from left to right. The spear whistled through the air as it swept towards Wang Yu. Wang Yu, who was about to get up, saw the spear sweeping towards him. He hurriedly rolled back, and the spear brushed past Wang Yu's scalp. Wang Yu originally thought that he had dodged this attack, but who knew that Luke would not let him go. He took advantage of the opportunity to turn his entire body around, and his spear swept 360 degrees before finally stabbing towards Wang Yu's chest. Luke's attack speed was extremely fast, and Wang Yu couldn't dodge this spear. He could only switch his weapon to a shield in front of his chest, and at the same time, jump back with both feet on the ground. Clang! With a loud sound, the spear stabbed into the shield. Wang Yu was directly hit by the spear, and directly flew back more than 10 meters before he landed on the ground. After landing, he staggered back 7 or 8 steps before he could barely stabilize himself. Although Wang Yu's health bar did not drop, he was still shocked and broke out in a cold sweat. The power of this spear was actually so strong. Chapter 1595. As a top-tier boss, Dark Luke was not as easy to defeat as expected. This was especially true for Dark Luke, who was much stronger than the previous Light Luke. After switching to melee mode, Luke's speed and strength were many times stronger than before. When he fought against Light Luke earlier, Wang Yu was able to deal with him easily in terms of speed. Now, however, Wang Yu's speed was completely suppressed by Dark Luke. In the online gaming world, there was an unwritten rule that ranged bosses had to be melee. This way, not only could they control their damage output, but they could also prevent the boss from kiting them. As for melee bosses, they had to attack from afar. This way, they could ensure their survivability while also kiting them. Although Wang Yu was a noob, he had played the game for a long time. Wang Yu was able to understand the basic rules of the game. Wang Yu knew that she wouldn't be able to take advantage of Dark Luke in melee combat. After being pushed back by Dark Luke, she steadied herself, pulled out a gun from her waist, loaded it, and pulled the trigger at Dark Luke's head. Bang! There was a loud bang, and a cloud of smoke came out of the gun's muzzle. A red bullet was fired at Luke at an extremely fast speed. In his rebirth, although guns were also long-range weapons, their trajectory was much faster than bows and arrows. The moment the gunshot rang out, the bullet flew towards Luke's face. Although Luke was fast, he was caught off guard and could not react in time. It was too late for him to dodge. Of course, Luke had no intention of dodging. The old man smiled and let the bullet hit his head. Clang! A few sparks appeared on Luke's head, but the health bar on his head did not move. Wang Yu had fought Luke before, so he knew that Luke was invincible under normal circumstances. Therefore, Wang Yu was not surprised. However, what surprised Wang Yu was that the bullet bounced off Luke's head. F***ck. Wang Yu's reaction was much faster than Luke's. She quickly tilted her body slightly and the bullet brushed past Wang Yu's cheek. At the same time, cold sweat appeared on Wang Yu's forehead. Damn it, Dark Luke is obviously much more difficult to deal with than he was before. Not only is he invincible under normal circumstances, but he can also reflect long-range attacks. How can he be so shameless? Isn't this forcing Wang Yu to fight him at close range? Light Luke's melee combat standards were relatively average, and his basic attributes could not suppress Wang Yu's. Although Wang Yu had no trouble defeating him, Dark Luke's basic attributes were clearly higher than Wang Yu's. As the saying goes, one could defeat 10. No matter how skilled Wang Yu was, he would not be able to fight Luke at close range. Not bad, just a little bit. From the previous exchange, it was not difficult to see that although Dark Luke was strong, he had only just suppressed Wang Yu. If Wang Yu leveled up 2 or 3 more times and his attributes were slightly higher, he would be able to fight Dark Luke at close range. It was not that Wang Yu did not have skills that could temporarily increase his attribute. Inner Breath, Wrath of Tempest, Burning Flame Steps, and Dragon Subduing Palm were all skills that could greatly increase Wang Yu's attributes for a short period of time. However, at this time, Wang Yu could not use any of these skills. Luke was invincible under normal circumstances, and he needed a 275 combo to break through his defense. A 275 combo was not a small number. With Wang Yu's current attack speed, he would not be able to hit such a high combo in a few minutes. As for Wang Yu's 4 peak buffs, their cooldowns were long, and their duration was pitifully short. The 4 skills combined only lasted for a minute. Of course, good steel should be used on the edge of a blade. This kind of explosive skill should only be used when it was needed. Even though he knew that Luke was invincible right now, he still wanted to activate 4 powerful statuses. This was no longer a waste, but a lunatic. However, without these buffs, with Wang Yu's current attributes, he was definitely not Luke's match. At this point, even Wang Yu, who had always been decisive, began to hesitate. At this time, Dark Luke's aggro had already shifted to Wang Yu. Naturally, he would not just watch as Wang Yu stared blankly. Just as Wang Yu was wondering what to do, Dark Luke swung his spear and charged at him again. Seeing that Dark Luke was coming at him fiercely, Wang Yu did not dare to face him head-on. He could only continue to use lightness skill to deal with Luke. Wang Yu's lightness skill was limited, and his lightness skill would decrease even more when fighting. Even with his current lightness skill, Wang Yu estimated that he would not be able to last long. Even if he wanted to run, he could not. Now that Wang Yu was in the temple, which was Luke's territory, there was nowhere for Wang Yu to run. As his lightness skill decreased, Luke's attacks became fiercer. Wang Yu felt wronged. Wang Yu had fought many bosses, including many celestials, but this was the first time he had felt so wronged. It was not that Wang Yu had never lost before, but he had always been defeated by his opponent's strong attribute. However, Luke's suppression on him was very weak. If he leveled up again, it would be hard to tell who would win. If he was killed by Luke now, Wang Yu would not be satisfied at all. If only he had not used up his stimulant, huh? Stimulant? Thinking of this, Wang Yu's eyes suddenly lit up, and he revealed a look of joy. Lowly mortal, die. At the same time, Luke stabbed with his spear. Just as the spear was about to hit Wang Yu suddenly shouted, "Wait!" As the god of light, the strongest person in the world, Luke was very particular. Hearing Wang Yu's shout, he pulled back his spear and stopped his weapon in front of Wang Yu. "What do you want? Have you decided to offer your body? As long as you can reintegrate with the Holy Light Soul, I can give you this opportunity." It could be seen that although Luke had darkened, he was still eager to be reborn. "No, no, no," Wang Yu smiled and waved his hand. "Do you want a drink or two?" Saying that, Wang Yu took out 2 bottles of wine from his bag and handed one to Luke. "Humph." Luke licked his lips and took the bottle from Wang Yu's hand. "Don't think that I'll let you off just because you treat me to a drink." As he said that, Luke uncorked the bottle and gulped down the wine in one gulp. Then, he wiped his mouth and asked, "Is there more?" "Yes." Wang Yu took out a few more bottles and handed them over. Then, he imitated Luke, uncorked the bottle and gulped down the wine in one gulp. Then, a blush appeared on Wang Yu's face. "Burp." Wang Yu burped and said, "I've finished the wine. Let's have a second round." Chapter 1596. What is he doing? Originally, Luke was chasing after Wang Yu on the screen, and everyone was having fun watching it. However, Wang Yu suddenly stopped to drink and chat with Luke, and everyone was dumbfounded. Does this guy's behavior have anything to do with Luke's strategy? Ma Longting asked curiously. As a businessman, Ma Longting was very sensitive. After all, Wang Yu was the first player to reach the Tower of Gods, and the first player to defeat Dark Luke. So, there was no strategy to defeat Luke. If Wang Yu's current behavior was the breakthrough to defeat Luke, then there was definitely something wrong with Wang Yu. Someone from the gaming company must have leaked the strategy to defeat Luke. This was a very serious matter. "It's okay." Zhao Xinpei and the others shook their heads. "Then does Luke like to drink?" Ma Longting asked again. In the game, giving an NPC something they liked would increase their favorability. It was the same for a highly intelligent god-tier boss like Luke. Once the favorability reached a certain level, it would be possible for the boss to team up with the player. There's no such setting. Everyone shook their heads again. Then why did he drink this kid's wine? Ma Longting was confused. "That's because the NPCs in the game always take advantage of others," Zhao Xinpei replied as he spread his hands. Ma Longting was speechless. "So this kid's behavior has nothing to do with Luke?" "No," Zhao Xinpei said with certainty. "Is that so?" Ma Longting touched his chin and nodded. "Then I'm relieved." As they spoke, Wang Yu and Luke began the second round of battle. After drinking, Wang Yu threw the bottle in his hand at Luke's head. "Humph. Is that all you've got?" Seeing Wang Yu throw the bottle at him, Luke snorted coldly. He didn't dodge and directly went up to meet it. Bang! There was the sound of glass shattering. The bottle broke and Luke was dumbfounded. Wasn't he able to reflect ranged attacks? How did this bottle, a wine bottle, damn it? Thinking up to this point, Luke suddenly realized that his barrier could only block offensive skills. Meanwhile, Wang Yu's wine bottle was a non-offensive tool. Naturally, it could not be considered an attack. Of course, although throwing the bottle wasn't considered an attack, it restricted Luke's movements. The moment the bottle was thrown, Wang Yu followed closely behind and staggered towards Luke. Although Wang Yu's movements were unsteady, his speed was extremely fast. When the bottle hit Luke, Wang Yu had already rushed in front of Luke. "Papa!" Before Luke could react, Wang Yu raised her hand and gave him 2 slaps across the face. Luke was infuriated. He swung his spear horizontally and swung the end of the spear at Wang Yu. Unexpectedly, Wang Yu's feet wobbled to the side. He turned around and lightly jumped. His hands suddenly reached behind him and grabbed Luke's wrist. Wang Yu was extremely close to Luke. Although Luke's attack was powerful, a long-handled weapon like the spear couldn't display its full power. Wang Yu's jump cleverly offset Luke's strength. At the same time, he hooked his feet up. Bang! A muffled sound rang out. Wang Yu's kick landed on Luke's cheek. Wang Yu's entire body was hanging on Luke's arm. The strength of this kick naturally came from Luke's body. This kick was equivalent to Luke punching himself in the face. Luke's strength was so great that this punch caused his head to sway slightly. At this time, Wang Yu let go of Luke's arm and fell to the ground. Just as Wang Yu was about to hit the ground, Wang Yu pushed down with both hands. At the same time, his feet flashed with lightning and he kicked Luke's chin from below. Thunder Stomp had a powerful knockback effect, and Luke couldn't stand steadily after taking his punch. The kick was so solid that Luke's entire body was sent flying into the air. Wang Yu took advantage of the momentum to flip backward and hit Luke's crotch with both fists. Without waiting for Luke to fall from the air, Wang Yu kicked the ground with both feet and crashed into Luke's chest. He twisted his waist and continuously hit Luke's chest with his elbows, making banging sounds. Huh? Is this an illusion? Did Luke go easy on me? Originally, Wang Yu was being suppressed by Luke. However, after drinking, Wang Yu acted as if he was on drugs. In an instant, he hit Luke 11 times in a row. Ma Longting couldn't help but frown. Didn't they say that drinking had nothing to do with the boss? Why did the boss suddenly become so weak after drinking? Was the wine poisoned, or did the boss do it on purpose? If the wine was poisoned, then it could be said that Wang Yu used an item. If the boss did it on purpose, then someone must have told Wang Yu about Luke's strategy. Let me see, Ma Longting wasn't the only one who was confused. Zhao Xinpei and the others were also confused. How could this guy suddenly suppress the boss? Could it be that there was a strategy that they didn't know about? That couldn't be. The technicians had the highest authority in the game. If even they didn't know about it, how could the players know about it? That was a bit ridiculous. As he said this, Zhao Xinpei opened Luke's stats. There was no problem. Luke wasn't poisoned and his stats weren't weakened either. Seeing this, Director Li suddenly showed an angry expression. I told you, this player is cheating. Moreover, there's an insider helping him cheat. Speaking up to this point, Director Li stared at Zhao Xinpei and said, as for who helped him cheat, I think it'll be easy to find out. After all, outsiders won't protect this player. Perhaps it was said that the older the ginger, the spicier it was. Director Li's ability to bite back was not any weaker than Wang Yu's martial arts. The only technician protecting Wang Yu was obviously Zhao Xinpei. In fact, Zhao Xinpei wasn't really protecting Wang Yu. He was a young man after all. His edges hadn't been polished and his eyes were still clear. Zhao Xinpei was just saying what he saw. However, after Director Li said this, Zhao Xinpei was labeled as leaking confidential information. Of course, Ma Longting wasn't an idiot. He wouldn't believe what others said. Although Ma Longting was a little angry, he still calmly pointed at Wang Yu and said, look at his attributes. Okay. Zhao Xinpei nodded and casually opened Wang Yu's stats. There were no changes to his stats, but he didn't know when, but there were 2 more buff. Drunkenness. Attack plus 10%, defense -10%, wine immortal. Drunkenness. Increases movement speed by 20%, attack and defense by 15%. Debridement. Drinking will remove the target's virus and heavy effects. Wang Yu's strange fighting style was definitely something that no video game designer would dare to imagine. Seriously, no video game designer would ever think that their strongest boss would be toyed with by a player who wasn't even level 70. What was even more frightening was that this Grandmaster of Combat didn't even use any skills, nor did he lose a single bit of health. Of course, it wasn't that the boss wasn't strong enough, but that there would always be someone stronger. The person fighting the boss was so strong that it made one's hair stand on end. Dark Luke's barrier was clearly much stronger than Light Luke's. Not only could this bastard reflect ranged attacks, but its strength was also disgusting. Wang Yu stuck to Luke's body like a dog's skin plaster. She pressed Luke down for more than 10 minutes, and finally, when her level reached the 1000th stage, Wang Yu was able to level up. Crash! With the sound of glass shattering, the black barrier on Luke's body shattered and turned into a cloud of black mist. Luke was also stunned by the attack. F***CK. I'm never going to play with this shameless thing again. After shattering Dark Luke's shield, Wang Yu couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. He cursed silently, F***CK, 1,000 hits to break his shield. Is the brain of this F***king game designer filled with sh**t? It's a complete waste of time, and it's not even the slightest bit useful. Achoo! The game designer in the development department next door couldn't help but sneeze loudly. At the same time, he rubbed his nose and mumbled, "It's almost summer, I'm not going to catch a cold again, am I?" With his previous experience, Wang Yu knew that there was a limit to how long Luke could break his defense. Even for Wang Yu, 1,000 combo hits was not an easy feat, especially when the target was a strong boss like Luke. In order not to repeat the same mistake, Wang Yu's eyes narrowed, and a golden light burst from his body. At the same time, dark red flames surrounded Wang Yu's feet, and the sound of wind and thunder could be heard from the flames. Dragon Subduing Palm. Activate. Flame Steps. Activate. Tempest. Activate. After activating all 3 major buffs, Wang Yu's stats instantly skyrocketed. Then, Wang Yu flew up and kicked Luke in the chest with a blink chain kick. Boom! With a loud bang, Luke was kicked into the air. True Dragon Subduing Mysteries. Dragon Tail Whip 1433223. A huge damage value floated up. As an undead, Luke's health was not high to begin with, only 10 million. After being kicked by Wang Yu, his health bar dropped by more than 10%. After landing on the ground, Wang Yu snapped her fingers and used Blink Shadow Chain Kick and Stage 2 True Chi Explosion. Her HP dropped by another 10%. The power of this kick had actually taken out 30% of Luke's health. But this was not the end. Before Luke landed, Wang Yu crossed his hands and used Condensed Weapon. A spear instantly appeared in his hands, and Wang Yu took advantage of the momentum and threw it. The spear flew towards Luke. Pooh! With a muffled sound, Luke, who was falling, was hit by Wang Yu's spear and nailed to a pillar in the temple. Wang Yu followed closely behind and appeared in front of Luke in a flash. She lifted her leg and delivered another martial god kick. True Dragon Subduing Mysteries. Dragon Dancing in the 9 Heavens. -1042544-24115541. Another 2 huge damage values floated up. Luke's health bar turned yellow and dropped to 35%. Ha! At this moment, Wang Yu roared and activated his internal energy. Then, he put his palms together and pressed them against Luke's chest. In an instant, golden dragons flew out from Wang Yu's palms and landed on Luke's body without holding back. True Dragon Subduing Mysteries. Astonishment of 100 miles. This move was supported by 4 powerful buffs. It was currently Wang Yu's strongest damage output skill. In fantasy terms, it was the palm technique that Wang Yu had gathered all of his knowledge. It was so powerful that it could shatter a specter ship with a single palm strike. Even Wang Yu had only used it once. Using it on Luke this time around could be considered to be worthy of his status. Boom! -412214-5. The golden dragons flew everywhere. Luke's health bar was emptied by Wang Yu's palm. Chapter 1598. Plop! After Wang Yu's kick cleared Luke's health bar, Director Li fell into a chair. Ma Longting and the others were also dumbfounded. The examination room became strangely quiet. Wang Yu actually killed Luke, and he did it so cleanly. No one would have thought that Luke, a legendary miracle boss with 10 million health, would be killed in one hit after his defense was broken. If Ma Longting had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed that Wang Yu did not cheat. At this moment, the most uneasy person was Director Li. The information regarding the expansion pack was caused by Wang Yu. Back then, Director Li and the others insisted that Wang Yu had cheated. In the end, they pushed the blame to Zhao Xinpei, causing Zhao Xinpei to almost resign. At this time, Wang Yu had personally sent Luke to heaven in front of the big boss, Ma Longting, proving Zhao Xinpei's innocence. As one of the leaders who had pushed the blame to the technicians, Director Li's good days had probably come to an end. Seeing that Wang Yu had killed Luke, Ma Longting's expression became serious. "Young man, you have good taste. Good job." Ma Longting patted Zhao Xinpei's shoulder and said, "You're right. We can't let the players pay for our mistakes. We can't let the technical staff pay either." After saying this, Ma Longting turned to look at Director Li and said, "Director Li, although I don't know how many people were involved in this incident, I still hope that you can give me a satisfactory answer." "I understand." Director Li's face was pale, and sweat flowed down his neck into his collar. "Lily, let's go." Ma Longting was not in the mood to appreciate Director Li's ugly behavior. He led Molly and the others out of the examination room. Bang! Inside the Tower of Gods, Luke died and turned into a ray of white light. As a celestial legendary boss and a first kill, Luke did not hold back and immediately destroyed him. Equipment, skill books, and quest items were all over the floor. The most eye-catching was a heart-shaped stone that shone with holy light. Wang Yu's eyes and hands were sharp, and she grabbed it casually. Glory of God. Quest item introduction. A gem from the heavenly realm. It contains powerful divine power. I finally got you. It wasn't easy. Looking at the glory of God in his hand, Wang Yu was filled with emotion. Wang Yu had encountered many bosses. Although Luke wasn't the most difficult, he was definitely the most overpowered and troublesome. Just this setting alone was enough to make Wang Yu's head swell. Even if level 200 was released in the future, no one other than Wang Yu would be able to break Luke's rule. At the end of the day, the Luke that Wang Yu had killed was not in peak condition, so although Luke had dropped many items, most of them were materials and skill books. Lightstone *5 Divine Feather *2. Although this material was extremely rare, it had no value in Wang Yu's eyes. However, those skill books were quite good. Holy Radiance, rare skill. Summons holy light to blind all targets within range. Lasts for 30 seconds. Class requirement, Holy Priest. Wang Yu was very familiar with this skill. Luke had used this skill to blind his dog eyes just now. Unfortunately, this skill could only be learned by priests. The scary thing was that the only priest that Wang Yu had a good relationship with was Wuji. Although the control effect of blind wasn't as powerful as immobilize and stun, it was definitely the most disgusting skill. Yes, Wuji was the same. In terms of disgusting, Wuji and blind were basically equal. For a disgusting person to obtain such a disgusting skill, it was hard for Wang Yu to imagine how great the chemical reaction would be. After all, Wuji was now a walking bomb. Adding the flash bomb effect on him, TSK, what a bastard. After putting Holy Radiance into his bag, Wang Yu picked up the second skill book. Holy Banner, rare skill. Throws the weapon in the hand to deal light magic damage to the enemy. Increases the attack speed of nearby allies. Activating the skill will draw the player towards the army flag. All enemy units in the way will be sent flying and deal a lot of damage. Class requirement. Knight Wang Yu had seen Luke use this skill before. It was much stronger than the knight's signature skill, charge. However, the class requirement was knight. There was no other knight in Chuanjin other than Mu Zixian. Mu Zixian wasn't good at fighting, so it would be a waste to give this skill to her. Although the skill was strong, it could only be used to exchange for money. Such a big boss, why didn't it drop a grandmaster of combat skill or equipment? Looking at the two skill books in his hand and the items that Luke had dropped, Wang Yu's face was gloomy. Damn, I went to great lengths to kill this boss, but the items he dropped were all for someone else's use. It felt like I worked so hard to save up money to marry a wife, but she ended up marrying someone else. Clearly, as the god of light, Luke's followers were all misophobic and didn't acknowledge the existence of other gods. If the upper beam was not straight, the lower beam would be crooked. Luke was naturally the same. Other than priest items, the items that this bastard dropped were for knight. This really made Wang Yu feel like he was about to collapse. Soon, most of the items that Luke dropped were picked up by Wang Yu. There was only a cross-shaped spear left on the ground. It was also the only equipment that Luke had dropped. Finally, something that I can use. Seeing the spear on the ground, Wang Yu's face was full of tears. The design of the spear was very simple, no different from the iron spears sold in the beginner villages shops. However, Wang Yu could clearly feel the divine power contained in this iron spear. Chapter 1599. After putting away everything, Wang Yu stood up gloomily. Rumble! Just as Wang Yu was about to go downstairs, the Tower of God suddenly began to tremble. Earthquake? Feeling the ground shaking, Wang Yu was shocked and hurriedly leaned against the wall. Under the violent tremors, the stones and dust on the roof rustled down. F***ck, what's going on? While Wang Yu and Luke were locked in a stalemate inside the Tower of the God, the various large guilds had long since surrounded the Tower of the God's entrance. Everyone was stunned when they saw the Tower of God, which had stood in the city for many years, suddenly shaking. Damn it, what the hell is going on here? Even the pagoda started to shake. According to the background story, the Tower of God was originally supported by the God of Light's divinity. Now that the God of Light, Luke, had completely fallen, the glory of God, which represented the God of Light's divinity, had been taken away. Naturally, there was no longer the protection of the Holy Light. Without the protection of the Holy Light, the Tower of God naturally became a jerry-built project. Rumble! The Tower of God shook even more violently, and it was clearly in danger. In just a few breaths' time, the Tower of God finally crashed to the ground. Fortunately, it was in the game. Although the Tower of God was tall, its collapse was just a matter of CG effects. There were no casualties, only a cloud of dust. When the dust settled, the originally tall Tower of God had turned into a foreign ruin. Crash! With a strange sound, a thick arm stretched out from the ruins. Then, a burly figure stood up from the ruins. At the same time, a system announcement sounded in the sky. Announcement: the glory of God, the Holy Light, has been stolen. As the descendants of God, the players of Sky Star City must uphold the dignity of God and retrieve the Holy Light. The announcement was repeated 3 times in a row. When the players in Sky Star City saw the announcement, they were all shocked. The Holy Light was the foundation of Sky Star City as the largest main city in South Korea. It also represented the God of Light and was the most important thing in Sky Star City. If this item was stolen, the NPCs would at most feel that they had failed to uphold the dignity of a god, but to the main cities, it would mean that they would be demoted. As the saying went, without the skin, where would the hair attach to? If the main city's level was lowered, the players wouldn't have a good ending. Losing levels, honor, and reputation would be the least of their worries. If they lost their skills and equipment because of this incident, who could they blame? Therefore, this Holy Light was much more precious than the Sky Star City's City Lord seal. In the beginning, everyone just wanted to keep Wang Yu here to earn some merit points. Even if they couldn't capture Wang Yu, they wouldn't lose anything. Now that Wang Yu had stolen the holy light from the God's Tower, the matter had blown up. If they captured Wang Yu, Heavenly Star City would remain safe. Players might even be rewarded by the system for recovering the holy light. If they couldn't capture Wang Yu, everyone would suffer together with him. What they should do now was no longer driven by profit, but they had to do it. There was no need for the guild leaders of the various large guilds to say anything. Seeing Wang Yu walk out of the ruins with the quest target's emblem, everyone unanimously surrounded her. Jin Ri Hua Kai shouted, "Keep an eye on him, this kid can fly." After saying that, Kim Sunbloom took a step back and hid behind Blossom Wuyue. Obviously, this kid had been captured by Wang Yu once and was traumatized. After all, his weapon had been stolen. Anyone would be afraid. He can fly. Hearing Kim Sunbloom's words, the surrounding guild leaders tensed up and quickly ordered, "Long-range professions, disperse and attack. Archers, be on guard. Don't let him fly." A guild without a leader was a motley crew, and a guild with a leader was a formation. After receiving the order, the mages hurriedly began to gather magic, and the archers aimed their arrows at the sky. Ha ha! Hearing Kim Sunbloom's roar, Wang Yu subconsciously looked in the direction of Kim Sunbloom. Although he didn't understand the language, judging from everyone's reaction, Wang Yu could roughly guess what Kim Sunbloom was talking about. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. While the players in Heavenly Star City received the system announcement, Wang Yu also received a system notification. System notification: bring the glory of God back to Heroes Continent. There is a certain chance of dropping the quest item upon death. During the escort process, flying items and skills are prohibited. The system was always such a scammer. Not only did Wang Yu have to escort the glory of God while surrounded by hundreds of thousands of players, the system even forbade him from flying. The system was basically forcing Wang Yu to fight every player in Heavenly Star City to the death. Moreover, it was a fight that would not end until one side was dead. After all, probability was a very metaphysical word in the game. It would be fine if there was a 100% chance of dropping the quest item, but once the word probability was attached to it, his life and death would be uncertain. As the saying went, if one didn't pay for it, one's fate wouldn't change. Wang Yu was an unlucky fellow who suffered from NPCs and the system every day. If he were lucky, he would drop the quest item after dying a few times. If he were unlucky, he would most likely return to level 0. Of course, even if he were allowed to fly, Wang Yu wouldn't even consider it. At this moment, nearly 10,000 players from 10 guilds had surrounded Wang Yu. Chapter 1600. Huh? Moonless Blossom was one of the players who had been persecuted by Wang Yu, the Demon King. When he saw Wang Yu charging at him, Moonless Blossom was both confused and surprised. He was confused because Wang Yu chose to charge at him despite being surrounded by so many players. He was surprised because Wang Yu dared to take the initiative to attack and break out of the encirclement. As it turned out, Wang Yu's actions were very wise. The players surrounding Wang Yu did not come from a single guild, but from many guilds. So, Moonless Blossom and the others were not in the same team as the players surrounding Wang Yu. According to the system settings, if you were not in the same team, you would not be protected by teammates. Everyone only had one target now, and that was Wang Yu. At this time, they naturally wouldn't attack other people. So, although there were many spells in the sky, their target was Wang Yu. Wang Yu's charge just so happened to be outside of everyone's attack range. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Spells rained down from the sky, exploding the ground into a cloud of dust. Wang Yu also charged at Moonless Blossom. Moonless Blossom was an expert. In a panic, he hurriedly raised his shield and used taunt on Wang Yu. Wang Yu was involuntarily pulled in front of Moonless Blossom. Moonless Blossom swung his shield down, intending to stun Wang Yu. Unexpectedly, at that moment, Wang Yu extended his hands and used knee strike, grabbing the shield with both arms. Shield strike had high priority, but that was only relative. Knee strike was a grab skill, and it was used by Wang Yu, so its priority was naturally much higher than Moonless Blossom's shield strike. Caught off guard, Moonless Blossom lost his balance after being pulled by Wang Yu. Then, he was thrown away by Wang Yu. By the time he reacted, he had already landed in the middle of the encirclement. This is impossible. Seeing that Wang Yu was still able to make a move despite being mocked, everyone around him was surprised. Meow, under the effect of taunt, players couldn't move at all, but not only could Wang Yu move, he even counterattacked Moonless Blossoms. This was too strange, wasn't it? What Wang Yu didn't know was that shield warriors weren't agility-type classes, so there was a relatively long gap between skills. Although taunt and shield bash were chain skills, the gap between each skill was extremely short. Wang Yu could still move when he was forcefully pulled to the ground and when shield bash landed. It was in this extremely short interval that Wang Yu reached out with his arms, and with his class advantage, he grabbed Moonless Blooming's shield. Of course, this kind of operation required a high degree of control over timing. If one wasn't a top-tier grandmaster like Wang Yu, they definitely wouldn't be able to grasp this small gap, let alone execute it as smoothly as Wang Yu. Thus, it was reasonable for normal players to find this strange. After throwing away Moonless Blossoms, Wang Yu didn't pause at all. He raised his hands, and 2 rays of light, one red and one blue, lit up as he used Dual Dragon Burst. Boom! The players in front of Wang Yu were instantly killed by Wang Yu, turning into streaks of dazzling white light. Seeing Wang Yu wreak havoc, everyone was dumbfounded. Attacking Wang Yu right now was definitely out of the question. Leaving aside the fact that Golden Times players had been killed, everyone had one less competitor. Even if players from other guilds didn't have such despicable thoughts, Wang Yu was currently in Golden Times ranks. Without his teammates to protect him, who would dare to casually attack? If they used magic, who knew if Wang Yu would die or not, but Golden Times players definitely wouldn't be spared. It would be awkward for them to help. If they didn't attack Wang Yu, everyone would be even more anxious. Everyone had seen Wang Yu's methods before. He could insta-kill someone with a raise of his hand. If they allowed Wang Yu to continue like this and didn't attack, no one could say for sure if Golden Times trash could stop Wang Yu. Perhaps Wang Yu would take advantage of everyone's fear and kill his way out. After killing everyone in front of him, Wang Yu turned back slightly to look at the guards behind him. However, when he saw that the guards were standing there indifferently, Wang Yu was stunned. What's wrong with these two? Why aren't they moving? Wang Yu also knew how dangerous the current situation was. There were at least hundreds of thousands of players in Sky Star City. No matter how strong Wang Yu was, there was still an upper limit. Facing hundreds of thousands of players and not being able to fly, this was simply an impossible task. Because of this, Wang Yu's original intention was to kill people to accumulate PK points so that the guards could chase after him. It was common knowledge that the guards attacked indiscriminately. When chasing after people, they were even more reckless and fearless. To sum it up, those who blocked them would die. Although there were many players in Sky Star City, against the bug-like guards, no matter how many of them there were, they would just be throwing their lives away. If there were guards chasing after them, they would definitely be able to break through the encirclement and escape. Before this, Wang Yu had already killed many people. Just now, Wang Yu had killed at least a dozen Golden Time players. Logically speaking, the guards should have rushed over and killed Wang Yu. However, the 2 guards just looked at everyone in a daze as if nothing had happened. Wang Yu hurriedly opened his attribute panel and glanced at his PK points. At this moment, Wang Yu was shocked to discover that his PK points were actually 0. However, his country honor points and achievement points had increased to more than 50 points. Damn! Seeing the honor points and achievement points, Wang Yu couldn't help but curse. Damn it, I actually forgot that killing people across servers doesn't increase my PK points. Just as Wang Yu was feeling depressed, A familiar voice suddenly rang in Wang Yu's ears. "Everyone, quickly surround him. Don't let him escape." Wang Yu heard the voice and looked up, only to see Golden Sunbloom commanding the players to surround and attack him. It couldn't be helped. Now that Wang Yu was on Golden Time's side, the other guilds couldn't help him, so Golden Time could only rely on themselves. Moonless Bloom was already dead, so the only player who could take charge was naturally Golden Sunbloom. The Golden Time players received the command and quickly formed a formation to surround Wang Yu again. Golden Sunbloom was also exposed in front of Wang Yu. "It's you!" Seeing Golden Sunbloom, Wang Yu suddenly smiled. Golden Sunbloom was afraid of Wang Yu's beating. Being stared at and smiled by Wang Yu, he couldn't help but feel a chill down his spine, and he hurriedly took a few steps back. "I'll return this to you." But at this moment, Wang Yu took out a shining staff from his bag and tossed it at Golden Sunbloom. Our student Wang Yu's upright personality closely followed the author's. At that time, Wang Yu and Jin Ruwakai had agreed that if there was glory of God in the Tower of Gods, the staff would be returned to Jin Ruwakai. It was very obvious that although Jin Ruwakai had ulterior motives and intentionally lied to Wang Yu, it was still a stroke of luck that allowed Wang Yu to get what he wanted. Chapter 1601. My Staff. Seeing that Wang Yu was ignoring him and had even thrown a weapon at him, Jin Rihua was a little confused. He subconsciously caught the staff in his hand. "Yeah." When Jin Rihua caught the staff, everyone's eyes instantly fell on Jin Rihua's hand, and their expressions immediately changed. Jin Rihua's staff was a dark gold equipment, and its arrogant special effect could be seen clearly from afar. In the current era where gold and silver equipment were still the mainstream, dark gold equipment was definitely the best of the best. As for large items like weapons, they were even more precious, and their market price was at least 6 digits in RMB. As for why South Korea also used RMB, it was obvious that they had won the trade war. So, everyone should stop dwelling on this question. This was a precious dark gold weapon, not an ordinary piece of equipment. As the public enemy of the city, Wang Yu actually gave Jin Ruwawa a precious dark gold weapon in front of everyone's eyes. Such an ambiguous attitude naturally made everyone suspicious. There was a saying in China called suspecting one's neighbor and stealing one's axe, which meant that one's thoughts were always divergent. Golden Time's background was not clean to begin with, and they were accused of colluding with foreign countries from the very beginning. At that time, it was only a one-sided story, and everyone was focused on hunting down Wang Yu, so they did not pursue the matter further. However, after seeing this scene, everyone immediately began to doubt Golden Time's players. If Golden Time did not collude with foreign countries, why would they be spammed in the public chat? If Golden Time did not collude with foreign countries, why would Wang Yu rush into Golden Time's camp? If Golden Time did not collude with foreign countries, why would Wang Yu give Jin Ruwawa a precious dark gold equipment? What made everyone suspicious was the fact that Moonless Blossom had gone easy on Wang Yu just now. The Shield Warrior's taunt had failed to pull the fighter's aggro, and had instead been thrown away by the fighter. If not for the fact that Wang Yu had not tossed Jin Ruwawa his dark gold staff, everyone would have been fooled by Moonless Blossom's acting skills. All these signs pointed to one conclusion: Golden Time's players were traitors. Traitors! Colluding with foreign countries. Not only were the players from other guilds suspicious, but even Golden Time's own players were suspicious. Of course, no one doubted themselves. They only doubted the Golden Sun blooming flower. Naturally, Jin Rihua was no fool. When he saw everyone looking at him with unkind expressions, he immediately reacted. His heart tightened as he hurriedly waved his hand and said, This staff is mine. Yours? The players that had participated in the siege against Wang Yu were all elite players of Golden Time. They were no strangers to Jin Ruwawa. Golden Time's players naturally wouldn't allow themselves to be trampled upon. Do you think you can call for reinforcements? Thus, Moonless Flowerbloom also issued an order in the guild channel to fight back. The surrounding small guilds were also watching the commotion. When they saw this scene, they all took action to take advantage of the situation. This was a large-scale group fight, and it was the main force of the large guilds. Picking up any 2 pieces of equipment would be worth a lot of money. There was only one holy light, and the small guilds definitely wouldn't be able to interfere. For a moment, those who attacked, those who retaliated, those who added fuel to the fire, and those who fished in troubled waters were all mixed together into a pot of porridge. It was a scene that would make anyone who saw it cry. As the instigator, Wang Yu had already taken advantage of the chaos to escape the battlefield. Looking at the chaotic heavenly star city, Wang Yu was dumbfounded. What's going on? Didn't I just return a staff? Why did they start fighting all of a sudden? It seemed like the heavens would help the righteous. Shaking his head helplessly, Wang Yu turned around and left Heavenly Star City. The players with combat power in Heavenly Star City were all in the large guild. Now that the large guilds were engaged in a fierce battle, the small guilds were fishing in troubled waters, and the only ones left were the casual players. Chapter 1602. Looking at the back view of Wang Yu leaving Sky Star City, the unaffiliated players chased after him without a second thought. It wasn't that they didn't know that Wang Yu had left, but that Wang Yu was an opportunity for them. Rebirth was a difficult game. If a person wasn't rich or as capable as Wang Yu, it would be difficult to survive in the world of Rebirth. Hence, the unaffiliated players were a pitiful group. In this world of guilds, all the good leveling spots and boss spawning spots were occupied by the guild. The bigger guilds ate the meat while the smaller guilds drank the soup. The unaffiliated players didn't have any guilds or friends, so they couldn't even drink the soup. Not only did they have to survive by killing monsters and leveling up, but they also had to form wild parties to clear dungeons. With the difficulty of Rebirth, the unaffiliated players would fail a few times in a normal dungeon. Without wild monsters and unable to clear high-level dungeons, the unaffiliated players' equipment would naturally be in a miserable state. The weaker the person, the greater their thirst for power. Similarly, the poorer the equipment, the more they hoped for a fortuitous encounter to stand out. What did Wang Yu take? The glory of God. To Sky Star City, it was the most important item. Once it was lost, the consequences would be unimaginable. Of course, if they could retrieve it, the reward would definitely be generous. The unaffiliated players didn't care about the punishment for losing the holy light because they were already miserable enough, and the punishment wouldn't be much worse. However, to the unaffiliated players of Sky Star City, Wang Yu was a once-in-a-lifetime fortuitous encounter. Usually, such a good thing would be monopolized by the bigger guild. Even if the bigger guilds didn't care about it, there would still be small guilds picking up the scrap. Hence, the unaffiliated players definitely wouldn't get the chance. Now, the bigger guilds were in a large-scale gang fight, and the smaller guilds were also fishing in troubled waters. The fat piece of meat, Wang Yu, had fallen into the hands of the unaffiliated players. Obviously, everyone knew that this piece of meat wasn't that easy to eat, but the desire for the meat had made them lose their minds. This was because they knew that killing Wang Yu and snatching the holy light would make them famous. Not only would they have good equipment, but they might also join a good guild. But these greedy fellows didn't even think about who Wang Yu was. Even in Heavenly Star City, Wang Yu was capable of turning a large guild upside down. Now that Wang Yu had left the city and entered the forest, wasn't chasing after Wang Yu in such a bad situation? After all, the Koreans did not know much about the Chinese culture. As the saying goes, don't enter a forest and don't chase a cornered enemy. Bangla was a peninsula, and Heavenly Star City was originally connected to the hero's continent. Wang Yu used his lightness skill to travel rather quickly. In less than 30 minutes, Wang Yu reached the border and stopped. This was because there was no longer a road in front of Wang Yu. Instead, there was a wide river. The river was surging endlessly, and the waves were tumbling. The current was extremely rapid. If it were any other time, Wang Yu could fly, and this river would not be able to stop Wang Yu. He could fly over directly by spreading his wings. However, now that Wang Yu's flying ability was prohibited, there were only two ways to cross the river. 1. Use a boat to cross the river. 2. Swim over. Boats were basically in the hands of the Heavenly Star City players, and the players of Heavenly Star City could not wait to kill Wang Yu. It was unrealistic for Wang Yu to turn around and borrow a boat now. As for swimming, as a person who could not swim in the north, Wang Yu was really not good at it. Of course, the characters in the game could swim, and Wang Yu also had something like a water-repellent pearl. However, he was unfamiliar with this place and did not know what monsters would be in the river. With the ability given by the system, Wang Yu could only guarantee that he would not drown while swimming. However, it could not guarantee that Wang Yu would be able to fight in the water. It was very difficult for a person who could not swim to fight in the water. Was Li Kuei ferocious? Even if he knew how to swim, he almost drowned while fighting in the water. Was Sun Wukong not awesome? When he encountered water, he would also avoid it. Although Wang Yu was valiant, it was indeed difficult for a person who could not swim to fight in the water. Wang Yu did not know how long the chaos in Heavenly Star City would last, but if he was really blocked by people by the river, it would be too late to escape. He looked around and saw nothing except for the reed. This was documentary literature, and crossing the river on a reed would not happen in the game. Chapter 1603. At this point, some readers would definitely say that a tortoise named Antoine had emerged from the river. But the truth was, they were wrong. What kind of identity did Antoine have? Even if he was imprisoned in the past, he was imprisoned in the Lake of Dragon Island. Now that he had escaped, how could a mere river be a place for him to hide? Under Wang Yu's gaze, a mast slowly extended out from the whirlpool. Then, a sail slowly rose up. The sail was very old, and there were even traces of spider webs on it. It reminded Wang Yu of something he had seen before. After a while, a large ship emerged from the water. This ship, looking at the large ship that appeared in the river, Wang Yu suddenly felt that it looked a little familiar. The ship was very old. Although it wasn't full of holes, it looked like it had 1 foot in the grave. It swayed when the wind blew, as if a wave could shatter it into pieces. It was fine that the ship emerged from the water, but there was no one on the deck. It looked very strange, like a ghost ship. Ghost ship? Thinking of this, Wang Yu couldn't help but frown. No wonder it looked a little familiar. Could it be that the owner of the ship was an old friend? Boom! While Wang Yu was in a daze, a cannon suddenly sounded. Following the sound of the cannon, a cannonball fell from the sky and smashed towards Wang Yu's head. Raging waves. At the same time, a thunderous roar sounded in the air, and a huge black shadow that looked like a crab jumped onto the river, stepping on the waves and rushing towards the riverbank. As expected, seeing the black shadow, Wang Yu smiled. The owner of the ship was none other than the captain of the ghost ship, Blackbeard. This old thief's taste was as unique as ever. It had been so long since they last met, but the style of the ship hadn't changed at all. Wang Yu gently took a step back. His right hand aimed at the cannonball that was smashing towards him and pulled, gently catching it in his hand. Then, he turned around and used the momentum to change the trajectory of the cannonball and threw it at Blackbeard. Blackbeard had never thought that he would be able to catch an artillery shell with his bare hand. Wang Yu's move was too sudden, and Blackbeard did not even have time to react. Bang! Caught off guard, the shell in Wang Yu's hand directly smashed into Blackbeard's head. Blackbeard screamed in pain as he was smashed into the ground. "Damn it, you dare to be rough with the great Captain Blackbeard. Do you know how terrifying the sea is?" Blackbeard roared and leaped onto the shore. He then raised the large pincer in his hand and clamped down on Wang Yu. "Hey, old Black! Long time no see." Logically speaking, with Wang Yu's personality, he might be merciful towards players, but he had always been ruthless towards system NPCs. If it was any other time, any boss that dared to be so reckless would have been trampled to death by Wang Yu. However, facing Blackbeard, Wang Yu had no intention of attacking or dodging. Instead, he gently waved his hand and greeted Blackbeard. After all, Blackbeard and Wuji had signed a contract. In theory, this ugly monster was one of Wuji's people. Even if you beat a dog, you had to look at the owner first, let alone such a big boss. Hearing Wang Yu's familiar voice, Blackbeard was slightly startled, then looked towards the direction of the voice. When he saw who the player standing in front of him was, his heart couldn't help but tremble, and he was stunned on the spot. Blackbeard was now on the verge of tears. To Blackbeard, Wang Yu was a complete nightmare. Previously, when he was a boss on the Immortal Abode Island route, he encountered Wang Yu and had his freedom forcibly taken away. He finally managed to change to a new place to live, but he still encountered this guy who wouldn't leave him alone. Could it be that the ship that he had painstakingly repaired was going to be dismantled again? Goodbye. Goodbye. Sorry for disturbing you. After coming back to his senses, Blackbeard did not wait for Wang Yu to speak. He hugged the pincer towards Wang Yu and turned to run into the water. Stop. Otherwise, I won't be polite anymore. Unfortunately, before Blackbeard could run a few steps, he heard Wang Yu's voice again. Blackbeard was startled and immediately stopped. He turned around and said with a cheeky smile, "Aya, isn't this Nyoga? Long time no see. I didn't expect to meet you here. It was definitely a misunderstanding just now. What are you doing here?" Meeting Blackbeard here was like meeting an old friend in a foreign land. Seeing Blackbeard's expression, Wang Yu also smiled and said, "Yeah, long time no see. I came here to kill a boss. Why did you come here to rob a house?" Wang Yu smiled and said, "Yeah, it's been a while." Hearing Wang Yu's words, Blackbeard said with a wronged expression, "What do you think? Meow, isn't this asking the obvious? If it wasn't for you dismantling my ship and losing my position on the route, would I have been sent to this place where even birds don't shit?" Wang Yu was not a fool. Looking at Blackbeard's sad and resentful look, he naturally guessed what was going on. Hence, he smiled awkwardly and said, "How about I ask for your help with something?" "Nyogo, what are you saying?" Hearing Wang Yu's words, Blackbeard was flattered and said, "Just tell me what's the matter. As long as I can do it, I'll do it immediately." "Send me across the river," Wang Yu said lightly. "What?" As soon as Wang Yu said this, Blackbeard's eyes widened. "You want to cross the river?" "Can't I?" Wang Yu asked in surprise. The river was not too wide, and Blackbeard had a big ship. How could it be difficult to cross the river? Chapter 1604. Luke. Blackbeard's eyes widened and hurriedly retracted his stance. He said respectfully, "Sir, please board the ship." As he spoke, Blackbeard snapped his fingers, and the specter ship drifted to the shore. Seeing Blackbeard suddenly retract his stance and called the ship to the shore, Wang Yu was dumbfounded. "What do you mean? Didn't you say that I have to defeat you to get on the ship?" "Nothing." Blackbeard hurriedly wiped his sweat. "I was just joking with you, just get on the ship." Blackbeard still felt a lingering fear when he said this. Damn, who was Luke? The god of light, one of the strongest in the world. As a native of the game, Blackbeard was also a hero. How could he not have heard of Luke? In fact, Luke knew that Wang Yu was strong from the beginning, but he did not expect that this guy was strong enough to kill the god of light Luke. If the god of light could do it, wouldn't someone of his level be a piece of cake? In the original setting of the game, players had to challenge Blackbeard and obtain proof to get the god of light's approval to open the passage between the two places. Wang Yu, on the other hand, directly killed the big boss, Divine Light God. This so-called challenge of Blackbeard naturally became meaningless. Blackbeard was not a masochist. Since the god of light was gone, why would he look for trouble and get beaten up for no reason? Wang Yu, This fellow who didn't know how to hold back, could even beat Luke to death. What if he was beaten to death? Who could he blame? After all, players could revive at any time, but the boss only had one life. Even if it could be respawned, the respawned boss would lose its original memory. Joking? Wang Yu was confused again. Was the artificial intelligence so advanced that it could still joke? Yes. Actually, you didn't need to fight me after you killed Luke, Blackbeard said truthfully. I see. Your joke is really lacking in skill. Wang Yu pursed his lips and walked straight to Blackbeard's ship. Set sail. To the Motherf King One Piece. Blackbeard raised his gun and fired a shot into the sky. With a loud roar, the ghost ship started moving towards the opposite shore. It had to be said that even though Blackbeard's ship was broken, it was still a boss vehicle. Not only was it much bigger than a player's ship, it was also not slow. Not long after, the Spectre ship floated to the other side. Under the respectful escort of Blackbeard, Wang Yu finally jumped onto the land of his motherland. As soon as Wang Yu landed, a system announcement came from the sky. Announcement: Player Iron Ox has successfully crossed the Grim River and opened a path to the Fallen Lands from the Hero's continent. His glorious deeds will forever be recorded in history. Apart from that, Wang Yu also received a series of quest notifications. Notice: you have successfully brought the glory of gods out of the fallen land. The glory of gods has been lost. Sky Star City will be downgraded from a main city to a town within 24 hours. Notice: you have crossed the border and destroyed the main city of a neighboring country. National honor points plus 10,000, achievement points plus 10,000, reputation points plus 10,000. Keep up the good work. Notice: as the Castellan of Yuhuiqing, your main city's prosperity points plus 30%, reputation points plus 10,000. Notice: as the Castellan of Yuhuiqing, your subsidiary city's prosperity points plus 10%, reputation points plus 5,000. Notice: as the Castellan of Yuhuiqing, your subsidiary city's main cities, in short, when a man achieves the Tao, even his chickens and dogs rise to the heavens. While destroying Sky Star City, not only did Wang Yu obtain a large amount of reputation points and achievement points, but his subordinate city's prosperity points and reputation points had also increased. Even his subsidiary city's main city had gained a lot of benefit. A main city's prosperity points and reputation points represented a main city's overall strength in the entire server. Ever since Wang Yu had taken over Yuhuiqing, with Wang Yu's popularity, Yuhuiqing's strength had been rising, and it was now right behind District 7's main city, Ares City. At this moment, the prosperity level and prestige of Holy Light City had greatly increased, leaving Radiant U City and War God City in the dust. From a third-tier city, Holy Light City had directly risen to the ranks of a second-tier city. Now, Holy Light City was not too far off from a first-tier city like Holy Light City. Although Wang Yu had not done much in developing Yuhuiqing's economy, he had managed to drag an unknown small city into the ranks of a second-tier main city. As the Castellan, Wang Yu had made an outstanding contribution. After returning to Hero's continent, Wang Yu's current location was called White Mountain City. As a border main city, White Mountain City was quite far from Yuhuiqing. It would take at least an hour to get there by airship. It was already late, so Wang Yu hung his character in the airship's hold and logged off. After Wang Yu logged off, Mu Zixian had already prepared a sumptuous dinner and was waiting for her. What was called life? Life wasn't about vows of eternal love, but simply having someone to accompany and someone to think about. When he came back from work, he would eat a hot meal, drink a little wine, and accompany his wife to watch a TV series. This was a peaceful and happy life. Husband, do you know what day it is today? After eating, Mu Zixian cleaned up the dishes as she spoke. Today, Wang Yu scratched the back of his head and said, "It shouldn't be the new year. F***ck. Mu Zixien was immediately amused by Wang Yu. She scolded jokingly, "Idiot, think again." This, Wang Yu sat on the sofa and began to rub his chin. Only working people and students were more sensitive to festivals because they only had holidays during festivals. Chapter 1605. The next day, when Wang Yu logged on, the airship had already dropped his character at Yu Huiqing's port. Seeing the familiar streets and the friendly gazes of Yu Huiqing's players, Wang Yu was deeply moved. The air in his hometown was much sweeter. What the hell were those people? They actually dared to rob everyone. Our Yu Huiqing's security was so good. Everyone loved each other and didn't even quarrel. After leaving the port, Wang Yu went straight to a small alley. Hermit had been waiting for him for a long time. You're back. Hermit wasn't drunk today. Instead, he was full of energy. Seeing that Wang Yu had come to turn in the quest, he welcomed him with a smile. Yeah. Wang Yu nodded his head. Did you bring the items back? Hermit asked. I did. Wang Yu calmly said. Then hurry up and give them to me. Hermit shamelessly moved in front of Wang Yu. His dirty claws were about to touch Wang Yu's body. Who would have thought that Wang Yu would lightly lean to the side, dodging Hermit's claws? What? You don't want to turn in the quest? Seeing Wang Yu's resistance, he asked in surprise. Path of the Hero was a double S-rank quest chain. This kind of quest was hard to come by, so the rewards were naturally very generous. Wang Yu had spent so much effort to find all the items, but he didn't want to turn in the quest. Hermit couldn't understand what Wang Yu was thinking. No. Wang Yu shook his head. What are the rewards for this quest? Hermit was also a crafty person. Hearing Wang Yu say this, he couldn't help but laugh. Are you trying to bargain with me? Just say what you want. As long as I can give it to you, I will give it to you. Okay. Wang Yu heard this and said bluntly, I want these 4 quest items. Hearing Wang Yu's words, Hermit was even more puzzled. He asked curiously, what do you want this for? Forge equipment. As Wang Yu spoke, he took out a piece of paper. This is? Looking at the blueprint in Wang Yu's hand, Hermit was stunned on the spot, his eyes filled with disbelief. After a long while, Hermit pointed at the blueprint and exclaimed, This is the blueprint for the god-slaying demon-vanquishing bow? Not bad. Wang Yu nodded again. The reason why Wang Yu didn't submit the quest immediately was because of the blueprint in his hand. The main materials needed to create this blueprint were the 4 quest items in Wang Yu's hand. As a martial artist, the most important thing was to have a suitable weapon. As for other equipment, it was not important to Wang Yu. Therefore, to Wang Yu, all the equipment he had added up could not compare to the martial scholar's sai in his hand. However, although the martial scholar's sai could be switched into many weapons, it did not have the form of a bow. This had always been something that Wang Yu regretted. In fact, there was no lack of bows in the game. Hermit laughed and said, Good comprehension. Then, Hermit said, Your charisma is low, so it is normal for you to receive quests that are more difficult than others. Moreover, your identity and class are very special, so the rewards you receive are naturally different from ordinary players. Don't just look at the surface. Let me give you an example. They are both novels, but why is Iron Ox so good? This, after hearing Hermit's explanation, Wang Yu was stunned and said, I see. I understand now. What about the quest reward? The reward is fine. Hermit waved his hand and said, Anyway, you need to do the quest to get these 4 quest materials from me. Since you have already obtained the blueprint of the artifact, then treat it as a material quest. Come, give me the materials. Okay. Wang Yu took out the dragon's scale, glory of God, heart of flame, and the obsidian stone and handed them to Hermit. After receiving the materials, Hermit spread out his left hand and placed the 4 materials on his palm. Then, he wiped them with his right hand. Suddenly, gold, white, red, and black light shone from Hermit's palm. Chapter 1606. As the light dissipated, the 4 quest items in Hermit's hands turned into 4 different colored gems. He then handed them over to Wang Yu. When Wang Yu received the gemstone from Hermit's hand, the system notification rang in her ears. System notification: you have completed the SS rank quest, the Path of Martial God, and have regained the dignity of a human. You have obtained XXXX EXP. In order to keep the numbers straight, all experience values will be replaced with XXX. It's an imaginary number anyway, so I can't be bothered to make it up. You have obtained XXX reputation, XXX honor. After a series of numbers appeared, they flashed again. You have obtained Flaming Heart X1, Obsidian Stone X1, Dragon's Scale X1, Glory of God X1. The best thing about completing a quest was the experience reward. The experience reward from a normal quest was even better than from a dungeon. As for the SS rank quest, the experience reward was even more frightening. Even though Wang Yu was now level 66 and needed an astronomical amount of experience to level up, after completing the Path of Martial God, a white light entered Wang Yu's body. 2 golden lights shone from Wang Yu's body, and he leveled up from level 66 to level 68. He was only a little bit away from level 69. Such an abundant amount of experience was terrifying. In addition, Wang Yu also obtained the title, Martial God. Martial God title, Legendary, plus 10% strength, plus 10% agility, minus 10% cooldown. Martial God, passive skill. As an unarmed powerhouse, Martial God's martial arts are especially powerful. Normal attack damage increased by 30%. All Grandmaster of Combat skills increased by 30%. Dignity of the Strongest, passive skill. As the strongest person in the world, Martial God has an unparalleled dignity. He is not affected by any boss aura. As expected of the Martial God. Putting everything else aside, just this title alone made Wang Yu feel what it meant to be worth it. How could an SS rank quest reward be trash? Wang Yu's strength and agility were not weak. At this moment, the 10% double attribute bonus directly raised Wang Yu's main attributes to a whole new level. Especially the strength attribute, which was absolutely crucial to the current Wang Yu. After all, as a martial artist, Wang Yu understood the principle of strength more than anyone else. In the past, when Wang Yu faced Death God's left hand, the full-power archer, he was almost at a disadvantage. Now that he had this attribute bonus, Wang Yu was confident that even if he encountered a full-power Grandmaster of Combat like Rampage, he would still be able to put up a fight. Martial God directly increased Wang Yu's normal attack and skill damage, making Wang Yu's damage output to a whole new level. Although the dignity of the strongest did not seem to be very useful, Wang Yu, who had been wandering around the edge of powerful bosses all year round, knew the importance of this attribute better than anyone else. Not to mention, this old man's aura alone made Wang Yu feel uncomfortable. One had to know that Luke, who Wang Yu encountered, was only a level 80 boss in the form of a soul. If he encountered a level 200 boss, once the aura of a god came out, perhaps Wang Yu would not even have the ability to fight back. As for the 4 gems in Wang Yu's hands, after being blessed by Hermit, they also changed from quest items to forging materials. Thank you, teacher. After getting what he wanted, Wang Yu happily cupped his fist at Hermit. Not at all, not at all. This is what you deserve. Old Man Hermit was also polite for once, and returned Wang Yu's salute. After walking out of the alley, Wang Yu opened up the God Executioner Magic Bow blueprint, then opened up his friends list and sent a screenshot of the materials he needed to Evildoers Run Wild. Then, he sent a message, "Give me these materials." Readers who had brothers all knew what a brother was. It was used to exploit others. Exploiting Evildoers Run Wild had been something Wang Yu had been doing for more than 20 years, and it had long become a habit. If one did not know better, they would think that he was the boss of Evildoers Run Wild. Poor evildoers Run Wild almost cried when he received Wang Yu's message. Boss, can't we cheat someone else? Our father just stole a bunch of materials from me, and now you want to rob him? You two can't be like this. Towards Wang Yu and his father, evildoers Run Wild. He was speechless. What kind of family were they? They were practically vampires. They opened their mouths whenever they needed something, and they were not polite at all. It was as if his studio was opened to serve them. Forget about Wang Yu, he might even give some money when he was happy, but the old man was no different from robbing him. Using his shameless words, he said, "You're all mine, so aren't your things also mine?" Facing such a father and brother, anyone would not be able to tolerate it, but the boss of Rebirth was helpless. If he did not do as he was told, he would probably be beaten up. Resist? Wang Yu and his father were the number 1 and 2 most ruthless people in China's Kung Fu circle. Fighting with them? It would probably not look good, so the only way was to cry poverty. Oh! Wang Yu was puzzled. Our father asked you for materials? Of course. He asked for a bunch of rare materials, and didn't give me a single cent. Evildoers Run Wild was on the verge of breaking down. TSK, TSK, TSK. How shameless! Wang Yu muttered in disdain, then hurry up and prepare the materials for me and send them to my email. It's not that I don't have the materials, but the money. Evildoers Run Wild asked cautiously. Wang Yu curled his lips and said, Our father didn't give you a single cent. Why should I give it to you? F***CK. Evildoers Run Wild was going crazy. Why? You have a problem with that? Wang Yu asked again. No. Evildoers Run Wild sighed and said, I'm afraid of you too. It's just materials. I'll give them to you. That's more like it. Wang Yu nodded in satisfaction and closed the dialogue box. In fact, it was reasonable to give money for the goods. As a businessman, Evildoers Run Wild asked Wang Yu for money. However, in the minds of Wang Yu and his father, they were family. It was normal for them to help each other and give equipment to each other when they were just playing a game. Not to mention brothers, Wang Yu never hid anything good from his friends in Chuanjin. So what if he took some of his brother's materials? If others asked Wang Yu to ask for materials from Evildoers Run Wild, Wang Yu would naturally pay. However, in this situation, Wang Yu didn't have this thought at all. For example, when everyone was playing a game with their friends, would they still use money to trade with each other? It was even more so between brothers. Using money here was basically an insult to kinship. Of course, what Wang Yu and his father didn't think about was that Evildoers Run Wild was no longer a child who peed in the mud. He was an adult and a big businessman at that. Chapter 1607. As a businessman, and a big businessman like Evildoers Run Wild, he was different from Wang Yu. Evildoers Run Wild was not alone. There were so many younger brothers who ate meals with Evildoers Run Wild. Naturally, he would not do things as casually as Wang Yu. However, who asked Wang Yu to be his biological brother? There was nothing he could do even if a demon ran amok. To move unhindered as the leader of such a big studio, Evildoers Run Wild couldn't do everything by himself. After closing the chat box, Evildoers Run Wild sighed and then sent the list of materials in his hand to his beautiful assistant, the fairy beast. Fairy, find the materials on this list for me. This, after receiving the list of materials, the fairy beast looked at it carefully. She immediately said with a surprised expression, Boss, these materials are rare materials. Even our studio doesn't have too many. Did you get a big customer? We have to raise the price a little. F***CK. Evildoers Run Wild was depressed. These are all given away for free. What? After listening to Evildoers Run Wild, the fairy beast's excited expression suddenly dimmed. Given away? Boss, do you know how much these things are worth? I know. Evildoers Run Wild was speechless. But I have no choice. If I don't give it to that kid, won't he rob me? To move unhindered. The fairy beast smiled in disbelief. I'm afraid there is no such person. Now it seems that there is no such person. Evildoers Run Wild said, Who knows if he will go against me if I don't give it to him? Is it that exaggerated? The fairy beast was surprised. Who asked him to be my brother? Evildoers Run Wild spread his hands helplessly. Upon hearing that, the fairy's face darkened again. Boss, last time it was your father, this time it's your brother. They both want such rare materials. To move unhindered, we don't have any surplus food. Cut the crap. Evildoers Run Wild frowned and said, Did I ask if you have any food left? Just tell me if you have any in stock. Yes. The fairy saw that Evildoers Run Wild's tone was a little unhappy, so it quickly and carefully replied. Then bring it to me according to the list. Evildoers Run Wild said lightly. But, the fairy beast said hesitantly, Boss, aren't you afraid that the brothers below will have an opinion? The composition of a workshop, a guild, or even a company were pretty much the same. The job of a boss seemed very awesome, but anyone who had been a boss knew that the bigger the company, the harder it was to manage. It was the same for guilds and workshop. Evildoers Run Wild's guild had a total of millions of people, which was comparable to the number of employees of any large industrial company in the world. Such a behemoth was naturally not something that a single person could command. After all, in today's society, even if the boss was the person with the highest authority, he had to think twice before doing something. To move unhindered materials came from the brothers in the guild. Even if Evildoers Run Wild signed the contract and paid, many things were not as simple as taking the money. To move unhindered management personnel were also many. Not to mention, every main city in Rebirth would have a president and a deputy president. As for Evildoers Run Wild, there were many management personnel under him. Although Evildoers Run Wild had managed the workshop to such a large scale, if he really gave away so many precious materials every 2 or 3 days, even if his brothers did not say anything, they would inevitably have an opinion. After all, the value of these materials was the income of the workshop, and the income of the workshop was directly related to the income of the management below. Cutting off one's source of income was equivalent to killing one's parent. Even if everyone knew that they were the boss employees and had no right to ask about the boss's private property, when it concerned their own interests, no one would feel good. Evildoers Run Wild and Wang Yu were the same. They were both homeschooled and did not know much about the ways of the world. Moreover, as the children of the suzerain's family, neither of them had learned how to do business. To be able to make the workshop so big, it was mostly because of the online game platform. Therefore, when it came to doing business, Evildoers Run Wild's methods were not brilliant, and the management of the guild was also completely spontaneous. Evildoers Run Wild seemed mature, but in fact, he was a child. His mentality was not as mature as Wang Yu. At this time, seeing that the demon dared to speak to him like this, he was immediately angry. He asked the demon coldly, "Are you the boss or am I the boss?" "You are." The demon did not dare to hesitate and replied. "Did I pay you less?" "No." The demon replied again. "Then I took my things and gave them to my brother. Why do you have an opinion?" Evildoers Run Wild continued to ask rudely. The demon beast was also speechless from the question. It couldn't be helped. No matter how big this job was, it was not a company. Even if there were many people under him, Evildoers Run Wild's current identity was only a relatively large workshop owner. Although he gave some rights to the players below, all the output was still Evildoers Run Wild's. As employees who signed the contract and got paid, they naturally had no right to question the boss' behavior. Now, do you still have any questions? Seeing that the demon did not speak, Evildoers Run Wild asked again. No more. The bewitching beast bit her lip and replied unwillingly. Then hurry up and find the materials. After that, Evildoers Run Wild ignored the demon. After Yu Huiqing and Wang Yu handed the task of finding materials to evildoers run wild, they came to the tavern. As usual, every morning, Chuanzhen's group would meet in the tavern. Then, they would do missions and dungeons. It was the same for a fixed team. Uncle Nyo. Uncle Nyo is here. As soon as Wang Yu stepped into the door of the tavern, he heard To Place One's Pride's voice. Hi. Good morning. Wang Yu smiled and touched To Place One's Pride's head, then greeted the others. Hey. At this time, Chun Xiang came over and asked mysteriously, Old cow, I heard that you cleared the route to Korea alone? Haha, you all know about this. Wang Yu laughed. Nonsense. Wuji curled his lips and said, We are not interstellar players. We have very good eyesight. Didn't you see the system announcement? Nyogo, you're awesome. Bao San and Yin Lao Er gave Wang Yu a thumbs up. The others also looked at him with admiration. Although everyone was used to Wang Yu's perverseness, they could not help but be amazed when they heard that Wang Yu cleared the route alone. You're flattering me. Wang Yu said modestly, It's nothing. Everyone. Well, some people were humble. They were so humble that you could not feel their awesomeness. Wang Yu's modesty was a great mockery in the eyes of the Chuanzhen people. Chapter 1608. That's enough. Stop talking nonsense. Wuji was more practical. He interrupted Wang Yu, who was in the middle of showing off, and asked, I heard on the forum that you destroyed the Tower of Gods in Heavenly Star City? As a result, the server is still undergoing major updates. Haha. Wang Yu laughed. I didn't destroy the tower. I just killed a boss and the tower collapsed. Oh. Everyone asked curiously, You actually encountered a boss? What kind of boss was that? The so-called boss of a scene was the kind of boss that caused the entire game scene to be buried with the boss once it died. Everyone was a veteran online gamer. They had encountered all kinds of boss, so they were very familiar with the setting of the boss of a scene. Under normal circumstances, this kind of boss would live in a landmark building specially designed by the designer. When the boss was there, the building would exist. When the boss died, the building would also disappear. Hence, it was called a boss of a scene. The building was the most important thing in the game. After the building in the game was destroyed, it would be refreshed after a period of time to ensure the integrity of the game. Hence, it was impossible for the scene to be destroyed so easily. Once a scene suddenly disappeared, it was obvious that the game would have a new update. Because of this, the boss of a scene was a fierce character that guarded an area. In the early and middle stages of the game, when the player's equipment and character had not reached their peak, they would not be able to move at all. Thinking about it, it made sense. The designer had spent a lot of effort to create a landmark building, but it was destroyed by the players within a few days of the game's launch. It was ridiculous. When the people in Chuanzhen heard that Wang Yu had killed a boss of a scene, not only did they not suspect it, but they were also curious about what kind of boss it was. It could be seen that Wang Yu's perverseness was deeply ingrained in the hearts of the people in Chuanzhen. No one doubted Wang Yu's ability at all. I think he's called God of Light Luke. He's quite difficult to deal with, Wang Yu said casually. Although Wang Yu said that Luke was not easy to deal with, his tone was as insignificant as killing an ant. God of Light? Really? Hearing Wang Yu's answer, everyone's jaws dropped to the table. No one knew who Luke was, but the name of the God of Light resounded like thunder. This was a common belief among NPCs in Rebirth. Even a priest like Wuji could be considered a follower of the God of Light. The competition to become a god was also very intense. As a god who had believers all over the continent, it was obvious just how powerful Luke was just by looking at the scene. Such a powerful and heaven-defying god had actually been killed by someone. Even though the person who said this was Wang Yu, everyone's faces still revealed traces of disbelief. This was 2F** King Unreliable. A player who wasn't even level 70 could slay the light god. No one could believe it. Hee hee. Wang Yu seemed to have anticipated everyone's suspicions. Seeing everyone's expressions, Wang Yu casually tossed the skill book that Luke had dropped onto the table. "This is what Luke gave me." Seeing the skill book on the table, everyone trembled. They hurriedly cast detect spells, wanting to see what the radiant god could give them. However, after seeing the skill book on the table, everyone couldn't help but purse their lip. "The light god gave me something like this?" To be honest, although the two skill books that Wang Yu had tossed out were not bad, they weren't very good. If this was dropped by an ordinary boss, no one would say anything. After all, area of effect blindness and movement skills were more practical skills. However, as the light god, Luke had only given these two skill books. This was a bit unfitting of his status as a god. Even ordinary bosses had a chance of dropping this kind of thing. After all, Luke was only a level 80 boss. If he really dropped an ultimate skill like Judgment Day, even Wang Yu couldn't believe it. "Is this skill bad?" Wang Yu asked curiously. As a true noob in the game, there were some things that Wang Yu was not ashamed to ask. "It's not bad." Wuji casually put away the skill book that he could use, then said calmly, "But that depends on who drops it. A skill like Light God's Explosion isn't very good. Are you hiding something good?" "Haha. As expected of old dog Wuji, your nose is very sharp." Wang Yu laughed, then took out a spear from his pocket and tossed it onto the table. Thud! The long spear landed on the table with a heavy thud. The gazes of everyone from Chuanjin were attracted to it. The spear on the table was more than 2 meters long. The spear's handle was dark gray and didn't have a trace of luster. The spearhead was in the shape of a cross and also looked gray. The most direct way to judge the quality of an equipment in the game was by looking at its color. Exquisite equipment all had a halo effect. The higher the level, the more dazzling it would be. Divine equipment was even more dazzling. Players didn't need to specifically examine it. They just needed to look at it to know that it was not an ordinary item. On the other hand, the spear that Wang Yu threw on the table was extremely ordinary. It did not have any glow or special effects. It looked like a normal iron spear that could be sold in a store. In comparison, the only difference was that it had a more unique design. If it was not for the fact that Wang Yu had taken it out, no one would even give it a second look if it was thrown on the street. Of course, they were all adults, so they naturally couldn't mock Wang Yu. After all, this man was ruthless, so there was no benefit in offending him. Everyone looked at Wang Yu with eager eyes. "All of you get lost. You're talking as if you don't have any legendary weapons." Wang Yu laughed as he waved his hand. It had to be said that most of the weapons in Xuanzhen's hands were related to Wang Yu. From Mingdu's vermilion bird's staff to place one's pride's thorn of despair, Bao San and Yin Lao Air's 2-piece divine god equipment set, all of them were made by Wang Yu, not to mention Chun Xiang's staff. Although Wang Yu usually had a bad hand when it came to clearing dungeons, he was still the lucky prince of Xuanzhen, the kind that did not care about himself at all. "With this, who dares to fight me?" Wuji picked up the spear and swung it twice, feeling extremely pleased with himself. At the same time, he did not forget to whisper to Wang Yu, "That doesn't include you. TSK. You're so ignorant." Wang Yu curled his lips. "I've gotten something good from this quest." "Oh!" Everyone was surprised. "It's better than Wuji's spear?" "Of course." As he said this, Wang Yu was about to show off the god-vanquishing Bao's blueprint when a message interrupted Wang Yu's actions. "Brat, where are you?" Chapter 1610. F***CK. Seeing the sender's ID, Wang Yu was speechless. In Rebirth, there were many people who dared to call themselves Iron Ox's father in private. However, there was only one person who dared to use this name without fear of Wang Yu's revenge, and that was Wang Yu's father, Comrade Old Wang. Comrade Old Wang was different from Wang Yu. He was a real free-spirited person who didn't belong to any guild or group. He played a large-scale online game like Rebirth as a single-player game and never got tired of it. The life of an old man was indeed not something that a young person could imagine. Someone like Comrade Old Wang, who was elusive, never liked to interact with others. Not to mention others, he never even contacted his two sons. Wang Yu had only met his father once. At that time, he also added him as a friend. However, although his name was always on his friend list, he never took the initiative to communicate with him. This was normal. After all, sons and fathers usually didn't have much to communicate with. Forcing communication was even more awkward. As for why Comrade Old Wang suddenly contacted him, Wang Yu had some idea. According to Wang Yu's knowledge, Comrade Old Wang had just scammed a batch of materials from evildoers Run Wild not long ago. Now that he was looking for him, his purpose was obvious. "I'm at the tavern." After a slight pause, Wang Yu replied casually. Soon, Comrade Old Wang also replied, "Okay, stand there and don't move. I'll be there soon." Kaboom! Just as Wang Yu received the message, he heard a muffled sound. The door of the tavern was pushed open from the outside. Then, a burly orc man walked into the tavern. Orc players were more burly than human players. This orc man was even more burly. He was more than 2 meters tall, and his body was as wide as two normal people. His every movement was quite powerful. The ID above the orc's head was especially eye-catching: Iron Ox's father. If he dared to use this ID in other main cities, most people would only sigh and lament that this person's ability to court death was extraordinary. However, in Yu Huiqing, he dared to use these 4 words to stroll around the streets, which could only be described as arrogant. Meow, Yu Huiqing, who's the worst to provoke? Without a doubt, the answer was Iron Ox. As the city lord of Yu Huiqing, Chuanzhen's #1 expert, Wang Yu single-handedly suppressed the various large guilds. Even a large guild like Blood Alliance was submissive to him. His fame was even more intimidating. Even the players in the nearby main cities would respectfully address Wang Yu as God Iron Ox when they heard his name. If he dared to be disrespectful, he would be worried that Wang Yu would come knocking on his door with his morning staff. This person actually dared to call himself Iron Ox's father. Such an arrogant person simply didn't know how to write the word death. At this time, there were quite a few people in Yu Huiqing's tavern. Those who mingled in the tavern naturally weren't unfamiliar with Wang Yu and Chuanzhen's group. Seeing the ID above the orc's head, everyone couldn't help but be shocked. They carefully glanced at Chuanzhen's group, then hurriedly lowered their heads and fled the tavern. What a joke! That orc's aura was extraordinary, not inferior to Wang Yu's. Moreover, for him to appear in front of Wang Yu with this ID, he definitely wasn't someone easy to deal with. If they fought in the tavern, wouldn't they tear down the tavern? When gods fought, mortals suffered. Everyone had seen what happened to Sword to the Heavens. Who dared to stay here and watch Wang Yu's show? As the players in the tavern left, the attention of Chuanzhen's group was attracted by the burly orc. To place one's pride was smart. Before Wang Yu could say anything, To place one's pride scurried over to the burly orc's side and greeted him obediently. "Uncle Wang, why are you here?" Seeing this, Wuji and the others hurriedly stood up. Although old Wang was old, his memory wasn't bad at all. He had a deep impression of this wimpy kid who had once dared to hit him. At this time, seeing that to place one's pride had become so obedient, old Wang patted to place one's pride's head in satisfaction and said, "I'm just strolling around. Everyone, don't be polite." After saying that, old Wang waved his hand at Wuji and the others, indicating for them to sit down. Everyone politely nodded at old comrade Wang and sat down. Old Wang didn't stand on ceremony. He casually pulled 2 stools together and sat down beside Wang Yu. He said unhappily, "You people here have no manners." "What's wrong?" Wang Yu asked in confusion. "Someone dared to rob you." "That's not it." Old Wang waved his hand and said, "They kept staring at me. Have they never seen such a handsome orc before? Just now, those people saw me and ran out. Could it be that they saw me and couldn't drink any more? That's too rude. Everyone in Chuanjin was speechless. Well, Wang Yu and his son's personalities were indeed of the same origin. Although their temperaments were very different, they were still very similar to each other in terms of appearance. Wang Yu was speechless and wiped his sweat. He pointed at the 4 words above old Wang's head and said, "Dad, don't you think the 4 words above your head are very ostentatious?" Ostentatious? I don't think so. Old Wang shook his head and said, "In other main cities, other players all praise me for having a good name." Is that so? Wang Yu's face darkened. Tell me which main city. I'll visit it another day. Good my ass. It's so unpleasant to hear. Nonsense. When old Wang heard this, he slammed his palm on the table, causing the wine glasses on the table to jump up. He continued, "I'm your father. This is a fact. How can this name be unpleasant to hear? If it's unpleasant, it's your name that's unpleasant. What does it have to do with me?" When everyone in Chuanjin saw this, they hurriedly reached out to hold their wine glasses. Then, they looked at Wang Yu and expressed their interest in watching these 2 people with unpleasant names. Wang Yu helplessly spread his hands and said, "Then who gave me this unpleasant name?" Oh, everyone in Chuanjin hugged their wine glasses and looked at old Wang again. "Haha, don't mind these details." Old Wang laughed and hurriedly changed the topic. "I didn't come to find you today to discuss these issues with you." Wang Yu was speechless. Alright, the older one got, the more shameless they became. This was Wang Yu's life experience. Comrade old Wang was not a reasonable person to begin with, so having such a shameless face was within Wang Yu's expectations. "Then why did you come to find me? Don't tell me you just want to show off your ID." Wang Yu curled his lips. Wang Yu was almost 30 years old and was not young anymore. He still needed to maintain some dignity. Although the ID of old Wang did not seem like much in the eyes of acquaintances, Wang Yu was the lord of a city. If old Wang strolled around the streets with this name, it would have a bad influence. Chapter 16:11. Of course not. Comrade old Wang grinned, revealing 2 fangs. Then, he casually threw a blueprint on the table. Everyone instinctively cast detect on it, and the attributes of the blueprint appeared before their eyes. Night Devil's Blade Blueprint, precious item. Can be used to forge an epic-grade weapon, Night Devil's Blade. F***CK. An epic-grade equipment blueprint? Everyone was stunned when they saw the attributes of the blueprint. Everyone had seen blueprints before. They were used to increase the proficiency of blacksmith. Everyone knew that the upper limit for players to forge equipment was dark gold equipment. As for legendary equipment like epic-grade equipment, it was something that normal people could only dream of. Under normal circumstances, epic-grade equipment could only be obtained through quests or miraculous encounters. If one wanted to forge it, the requirements were more stringent. Wang Yu was the only blacksmith in the entire server who could forge legendary equipment. This was something that Wang Yu had the most say in. How did Wang Yu get his legendary equipment? Other than those special materials, the most important thing was the blueprint. Wang Yu's forging was a craft that could recast equipment. He could recast broken legendary equipment as a blueprint. This was a rather shameless method. It was basically equivalent to taking a legendary equipment and melting it down again. It could not be considered as forging a legendary equipment at all. Because of this, strictly speaking, Wang Yu did not forge a legendary equipment of his own. The root cause was that Wang Yu did not have a blueprint. Even an expert like Wang Yu had not seen an epic-grade equipment blueprint. This showed how rare it was. It was very surprising that a solo player like old Wang could create such a thing. Amazing, right? Seeing Wang Yu's expression, old Wang smiled proudly. I stole it. Wang Yu was speechless. Lao Wang was probably the only one in the world who could describe the robbery so casually. Instead of feeling ashamed, Wang Yu felt proud. Lao Wang ignored Wang Yu's speechless expression. Instead, he waved his hand and said casually, "I heard that you're quite good at forging equipment. Come, forge a suitable weapon for me." As he spoke, Lao Wang began to take things out again. In just a short while, mithril, adamantine, dark steel, and other rare materials covered the entire table. With so many rare materials, everyone from Quanzhen was drooling. Chuanzhen's group was considered the wealthiest group of people in the game, but even they would find it difficult to take out so many rare materials. Comrade Old Wang's equipment was tattered, so it was hard to believe that he could throw out so many good items with a wave of his hand. Wuji was even more surprised. "Uncle Wang, why do you have so many rare materials?" "Hee." Lao Wang laughed and said proudly, "My son, evildoers run wild, gave it to me." No wonder, no wonder. Hearing Lao Wang's words, everyone came to a sudden realization. Damn, they forgot that this old man had a son who specialized in materials. These materials must have cost a lot of money. Wuji sighed and asked, "Money?" Lao Wang's eyes widened and he curled his lips. "I'm asking my son for something and he dares to ask me for money?" This, Wuji couldn't help but frown and whisper, "This is against the rules." Wuji was a clear person, so he naturally wouldn't be as one-sided as Wang Yu and his son. As a businessman, evildoers run wild gave out so many rare materials for no reason. In Wuji's eyes it was against the rules. Hee. Unexpectedly, Wang Yu also came over and said to Lao Wang proudly, "This is nothing. I also asked for a batch of materials and they're much better than yours." "Is that so?" When Lao Wang heard that he didn't take advantage of Wang Yu, the proud expression on his face immediately disappeared. He muttered, "Give me a copy of your list. I'll ask him for it the next time I see him." Hearing the conversation between the two, Wuji was sweating profusely. "Old cow, it's not that I want to criticize you, but it's fine that Uncle Wang asked Old Devil for materials, but why are you doing the same?" Lao Wang was evildoer Rampaging's biological father, so it was only right and proper for him to show filial piety to his father. Evildoer Rampaging gave Lao Wang materials, so it was not appropriate for his subordinates to criticize him. After all, when it came to forging equipment for his father, it was reasonable for the eldest son to do the work and the younger son to do the work. However, even blood brothers should settle accounts clearly. Wang Yu also asked for things, and he asked for more than Lao Wang. This was somewhat unreasonable. "Is there something wrong?" Seeing Wuji's attitude, Wang Yu asked in confusion. "Old Devil is a businessman. He has a bunch of underlings who are begging for food." Wuji said solemnly, "If you take so many rare materials for free, his underlings will definitely have an opinion." "Is that so?" Wang Yu scratched his head thoughtfully. In reality, Wang Yu wasn't someone who cared about money. Otherwise, he wouldn't have casually given away the godly spear. However, this kid was simple-minded. In his mind, he could put aside his interests and talk about friendship with his friends in Chuanzhen. If he talked about money with his brothers, wouldn't it seem like they were estranged? However, after hearing Wuji's words, Wang Yu felt that it made sense. "That's right," Wuji said faintly, "online games aren't like reality. You see that Old Devil is enjoying his limitless glory now. In fact, his studio doesn't have any security guarantee at all. There's no knowing what's in a man's heart. If it's just a small fight, it's fine. Everyone can still do things for the sake of face. Now that it's such a big fight, it's all about the rules. I think you should try your best to follow the rules and not make things difficult for Old Devil." Although Wuji was a treacherous person, he was a person who knew the rules. He was also very loyal to his friends. Wang Yu wasn't good at dealing with people, but he also knew the principle of listening to people's advice. Naturally, he appreciated Wuji's words. Okay. Since Wuji said so, Wang Yu also realized that his behavior was inappropriate. He pondered for a moment and said, Then I'll transfer the money to my dad after I finish forging the weapon for him. I appreciate this about you." When Wuji heard this, he smiled slightly. With Wuji's character, he couldn't chat with just anyone. Wang Yu, a guy who didn't even have social experience, was even more difficult to deal with people. The reason why Wuji and Wang Yu got along so well was that, in addition to Wang Yu's heaven-defying ability that made Wuji admire him, the most important reason was that Wang Yu had a pure temperament. If it were someone else, Wuji definitely wouldn't care about this kind of brotherly matter. Even if he cared, he would most likely get a "it's none of your business." Mingdu put away his staff with a proud look on his face. After dispersing the onlookers, the street suddenly opened up, and the group was quickly teleported into the guild encampment. Ding ding dang dang. When they approached the forging workshop, a crisp and rhythmic sound of iron being hammered could be heard. When they opened the door, they saw Chopper 345, who was bare-chested, hammering the weapons on the iron table. In the past, the workshop was used by Molly and Chopper 345. Ever since Molly left, the workshop belonged to Chopper 345 alone. Ever since he entered the workshop, he had never left it. Whenever he went online, he would work until he went offline. It wasn't hard to see that this young man truly loved blacksmithing from the bottom of his heart. Otherwise, anyone would be annoyed by a job as boring as blacksmithing, but not only did Chopper 345 not feel disgusted, he even enjoyed it. It was truly unbelievable. However, Wang Yu understood this young man very well. Practicing martial arts was also a very boring thing, but Wang Yu had been practicing it for more than 20 years. Perhaps this was the spirit of professionalism. In the past, Chopper 345 had to rent a stall outside, so he didn't have many blueprints or materials. But now, with the backing of the Quanzhen sect, all kinds of supplies were very sufficient. Chopper 345 was also like a fish in water. This young man's blacksmithing skills were as professional as Wang Yu's. Not only was he talented, but he was also very hard-working. More than half of the equipment in Mu Zixian's shop came from Chopper 345, and he could be considered as the #1 supplier in the grocery store. Nyogo, Boss Wuji, everyone, why are you all here? Everyone, find a place to sit, I'll finish this weapon. Seeing that Wang Yu and the others had entered the forging workshop, Chopper 345 raised his head and greeted them. He then continued hammering the weapons on the iron table. Everyone was impressed by Chopper 345's professionalism. They nodded and stood there, waiting silently. At this moment, Comrade Old Wang leisurely walked over with his hands behind his back. Huh! Seeing Chopper 345's forging technique, Old Wang was slightly startled. He had a surprised expression on his face, as if he was very interested in Chopper 345's forging technique. Although he had many doubts, he still quietly stood at the side and waited for Chopper to finish forging the weapon. After hammering the weapon in his hand, Chopper raised his hand and placed the weapon in the cold water that he had prepared beforehand. Old Wang finally opened his mouth and asked, "Who is Lu Tianqi to you?" When Chopper 345 heard Lu Tianqi's name, it was as if he was struck by lightning. His body trembled, and he unconsciously took 2 steps back. He then raised his head and looked at Lao Wang. When he saw Lao Wang's appearance and the arrogant ID above his head, he couldn't help but reveal a surprised expression. You are. Chopper 345 pointed at Old Wang and asked in surprise. He's my dad. Wang Yu helplessly explained, isn't it written on his ID? This name is really unique. Chopper 345 gave a thumbs up in admiration. Who is Lu Tianqi to you? Old Wang didn't care about Chopper's evaluation of his name and asked again. Lu Tianqi is my grandfather. Chopper honestly said, do you know him? I don't just know him. Old Wang said, I'm Wang Tianlong, you should have heard of me. Wang Tianlong of the River Shaking Fist? Chopper's eyes suddenly lit up when he heard Old Wong's name. He said in surprise, "You're the old friend that my grandfather often talks about?" "Sigh, that's just an empty title." Old Wong sighed and nodded. "I haven't seen him for more than 20 years. How is he now?" "My grandfather has been gone for a few years." Chopper's expression was a little gloomy when he heard Old Wong's question. Time is always the most powerful killer. No matter how strong you are, when the time comes, you can't stop it. "Time waits for no man," Wang Tianlong sighed and said. "Did you just use your family's forging technique?" "Yes." Chopper 345 nodded and said, "Unfortunately, this is a game. Although the forging technique is useful, it isn't very obvious." Chapter 1613. What? The Chuanjin members were stunned when they heard Old Wong's words. Everyone knew that Old Wong had an epic-grade blueprint in his hands. It was even more valuable than an epic-grade equipment. After all, this blueprint was not as simple as creating an epic-grade equipment. Currently, there were quite a few advanced blacksmiths on the market. The only reason they had been stuck at this bottleneck was because they hadn't been able to forge a single piece of epic equipment. Hence, if a blacksmith player managed to forge an epic equipment using this recipe, that blacksmith would have successfully broken through the bottleneck and become a grandmaster blacksmith. This showed the importance of this blueprint. Of course, a blacksmith did not have a 100% success rate. The success rate of an advanced blacksmith creating an epic-grade equipment was even lower. Since the start of Rebirth, there was only one player who had created an epic-grade equipment, and that was Wang Yu. Wang Yu's forging level had already reached the Grandmaster level. Because of this, it would be safer to give this blueprint to Wang Yu. However, Old Wang wanted to give such a precious item to a small blacksmith. This was too much of a joke. To be honest, the people from the Quanzhen sect didn't know much about logistics players. Chopper 345 was dragged into the guild by Wang Yu, and he rarely interacted with other players. Their relationship stopped at the level of nodding acquaintances, and they would only greet each other when they met. Although this kid was usually very diligent, to be given such a precious item for him to practice with, even the Chuanjin sect's group of daring fellows found it hard to accept. Damn, it would be fine if the forging was successful. If Old Wang was happy, everyone would be happy as well. It would be good for him and good for me, but if it was a clang, the forging experience would be increased by 10. Wouldn't that be very embarrassing? Money was just a worldly possession. The cost of the materials was a small matter, but the key was that the blueprint was priceless. It was the only one in the world, and even if one had the money, they would not be able to buy it. Everyone could tell a thing or two about Old Wang's style from his mannerisms. He was already so old, but his willful and unreasonable personality was even worse than Mingdu's. If he was angered, he would vent his anger on the people of Chuanjin. Even Wang Yu would be punished. In such a situation, it didn't matter how strong Wang Yu was. What else could he do? Oh, on the other hand, Wang Yu didn't think too much about it. He nodded and handed the blueprints and materials to Chopper 345 without hesitation. Seeing the blueprint that Wang Yu handed over, Chopper 345 was stunned. Next, Chopper 345 pulled the valve on the furnace, and the molten iron was poured evenly into the mold, turning into a jet-black broadsword. After that, Chopper 345 placed the black broadsword on the workbench, and then picked up the hammer and began striking it rhythmically. Ding ding dang dang, ding ding ding. Pleasant sounds of hammering could be heard, and the broadsword on the workbench began to transform. Although they weren't blacksmiths, they had played the game for a long time and had a certain understanding of the blacksmith subclass. For blacksmiths, the forging process wasn't difficult with the help of the system, and the assembly process was relatively easier than the forging process. Only the tempering process was the most difficult part of forging equipment. At the same time, it was also the basic process of judging a blacksmith's skills. It was the most important process to test a player's skills. If one's tempering technique was stable, not only would the forged equipment have high stats, but the chances of getting full stats were also very high. If one's tempering technique wasn't up to par, they would be lucky to forge equipment with trash stats. The vast majority of equipment would fail due to the tempering technique, resulting in a loss of both player and money. Chapter 1614. Blacksmithing experience was based on the completion of the mold, forging, and assembly. The higher the completion, the higher the experience. However, if the blacksmith failed, the experience would be so low that it would make one's hair stand on end. This was the most crucial part of a blacksmith's forging, so one could imagine the importance of forging. If a good blacksmith grasped the forging process well, they would have a higher chance of successfully forging a top-notch item, and the more experience they would gain. If one didn't grasp the forging process well, the lower the success rate, and the lower the blacksmith's experience. This was also the reason why there were so few high-level blacksmiths in Rebirth. If it weren't for the forging process, as long as one was willing to accumulate experience, they would have already become a high-level blacksmith. Everyone here was an expert. Even if they hadn't eaten pork before, they had seen pigs run. Although they didn't know how good a true blacksmith's forging was, Chopper 345's mastery of the forging process could be seen at a glance. During the forging process, the more stable the rhythm and the more uniform the strength, the better. Chopper 345's hammers fell almost at the same time, and the strength of each strike was exactly the same. Even the layman from the Quan Zhen sect could clearly see the level of Chopper 345's skill. Perhaps it was because they hadn't seen many blacksmiths, but after playing the game for so long, they hadn't seen any blacksmiths as skilled as Chopper 345. F***ck, Chopper 345's superb memory left everyone in Chuanjin dumbfounded. They didn't expect their own guild to have such a hidden god. Sure enough, anyone that could catch the eye of Wang Yu wasn't an ordinary person. In fact, even Wang Yu couldn't help but be amazed by Chopper 345's forging skills. Wang Yu could also do this, but Wang Yu was a martial artist. Controlling strength and rhythm were basic skills. However, Chopper 345 was a blacksmith, yet he was able to do this. Who would have thought that blacksmithing was also a profound skill? Under Chopper 345's constant hammering, the big knife on the iron table slowly changed. From a black iron block, it gradually became glossy, and the blade gradually became clearer. The higher a piece of equipment's tier was, the longer the tempering process would be. Ordinary equipment could only be tempered 17 or 18 times. However, as an epic weapon, Night Demon's blade was not something that could be easily tempered. Chopper 345 meticulously hammered the big knife on the iron table for a full 5 to 6 minutes. His sweat dripped onto the iron table, making a sizzling sound. The others stood at the side and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. They clenched their fists tightly and stared at the blade of the Night Demon on the iron table. Clang! After another 5 minutes, a soft sound came from the iron table. The broadsword in Chopper 345's hand emitted a faint purple glow. Training. Done. Success! Looking at the Night Devil blade in his hand, Chopper 345 heaved a sigh of relief. The Quan Zhen members also clenched their fists in excitement. Chopper 345 picked up the Night Devil blade and examined it closely. He quickly took out the handguard, hilt, and lock rings from the side and assembled the Night Devil blade in one fluid motion. At the same time, Chopper 345 received a system notification. Congratulations, Night Devil blade has been successfully forged. Chopper 345 looked at the Night Devil blade in his hand and excitedly handed it to Old Wang. Old Wang took a look at the Night Devil blade, and its attributes appeared before him. Night Devil blade, unappraised. Expert players had an inexplicable fondness for top-grade equipment, especially the Quan Zhen members who were witnessing the creation of a godly weapon. They looked at the Night Devil blade in Old Wang's hand and shouted, "What are its attributes? Quick, show it. Who has an appraisal scroll? Give me one." Old Wang asked. "I have one. I have one." Wuji took out a blue scroll and handed it to Old Wang. He didn't expect this bastard to have 2 appraisal scrolls on him. After receiving the appraisal scroll, Old Wang skillfully patted the Night Devil blade. Puh! A blue light flashed, and the Night Devil blade's pitch-black surface slowly faded away, revealing its true appearance. Although the Night Devil blade was still jet-black, it was glowing. There were no other patterns on the blade other than magical inscriptions, but it still exuded an extremely domineering aura. As the blue light faded away, a purple aura shot into the sky. At the same time, a golden light shone from Chopper 345's body. Then, a system notification appeared in the sky. System notification. Player Chopper 345 has successfully forged the godly weapon Night Devil Blade, becoming the second Grandmaster Blacksmith in Rebirth and obtaining the title Blacksmith. His achievements will forever be recorded in the history book. The announcement was repeated 3 times in a row. Chopper 345 stood there in a daze, as if everything was a dream. As a solo player, Chopper 345 was originally a wandering blacksmith in a blacksmith shop. Although he was skilled, he didn't have a powerful guild backing him, nor did he have a large amount of blueprints and materials to feed him. He could only rely on buying high and selling low to survive. As a result, he became poorer and poorer. This was the situation for most solo blacksmiths. They all dreamed of entering a big guild and earning a high salary, but if they couldn't level up, who would give them resources? No resources? Blacksmiths naturally couldn't level up as fast as others, and it was a vicious cycle. Fortunately, Chopper 345 was lucky enough to meet Wang Yu, who knew what was good for him. Wang Yu managed to pull him into the Quanjin sect, which did not lack money. With a large amount of resources, Chopper 345's blacksmith level increased by leaps and bounds. Today, he finally broke through the bottleneck and became one of the 2 Grandmaster blacksmiths in the entire game. The pain and sweat he had to endure was unimaginable. At that moment, Chopper 345 was most grateful to Wang Yu. Without Wang Yu, he wouldn't be where he was today. Secondly, he had to thank Old Wang. If it wasn't for Old Wang's trust in him, he wouldn't have been able to break through the bottleneck. Nyo Go. Chopper 345 looked back at Wang Yu and his son, and tears almost flowed out of his eyes. While Chopper 345 was indescribably excited, the World Channel was once again in an uproar. What was the most important thing for a player in a game? Equipment. As an equipment supplier, a high-leveled blacksmith was absolutely essential. As for Grandmaster blacksmiths, they were even rarer than professional players. However, just a moment ago, an unknown player had actually broken through the bottleneck of the Grandmaster realm. To ordinary players, this was nothing. After all, no one could afford high-level equipment. However, to the major guilds, this was absolutely something that could drive them crazy. A Grandmaster blacksmith, and a nobody at that. He definitely didn't even have a guild. If they could invite him to their own guild. TSK. Chapter 1615. After all, there were only 2 Grandmaster blacksmiths in the game. One was Wang Yu, and the other was Chopper 345. No one would even consider Wang Yu. Not to mention the fact that Wang Yu had joined Xuanzhen a long time ago and was a core member of the guild. Just Wang Yu's identity alone was enough to make everyone flinch. He was the champion of the Pro League and the legendary number 1 player in the game. Out of the 10 messages on the announcement screen, half of them were about Wang Yu. Asking Wang Yu to become a blacksmith in his own guild? What a joke! How shameless would he be to do such a thing? However, Chopper 345 was different. Although Chopper 345 was fortunate enough to appear on TV with Wang Yu, the main character was Wang Yu. Under Wang Yu's halo, no one would care about a small fry like him. As such, no one had any impression of Chopper 345. It was as if this brat had suddenly appeared out of nowhere and became a grandmaster blacksmith. The game world was like this. Miraculous encounters happened every day. Everyone had played the game for a long time, so they were not unfamiliar with these strange events that suddenly appeared. It was obvious that Chopper 345 was a small fry who did not even have a guild. This time, he must have gotten lucky and somehow became a grandmaster blacksmith. These guild leaders were all cunning. They even wanted to get their hands on food that had a master, let alone a masterless blacksmith. As such, Chopper 345's private messages exploded. He was bombarded by countless guild leaders, including top guilds like the Blood Alliance. Technical talents were scarce everywhere. The value of a grandmaster blacksmith was worth at least 5 elite teams. Of course, Chopper 345 wasn't an ungrateful person. Everything he had came from Wang Yu and Chuanjin. Even though he had suddenly become famous, he couldn't forget his roots. Besides, the treatment he received from the major guilds wasn't as good as Chuanjin's. After all, a large guild had a lot of members, so there were also a lot of benefits to be split. Even if a large guild had tens of thousands of members, the majority of the benefits would still fall into the hands of the guild leader and other leaders. Meanwhile, Chuanjin had less than 20 players, and everyone had always split the benefits equally. It was hard to find such a guild. Therefore, Chopper 345 sent a group message to the other guilds, "Sorry, I have my own guild." Of course, the players from the big guilds weren't easy to deal with. They smiled at Chopper 345's words and sent another message, "Brother, which guild are you from? Our guild is very well treated. We can discuss the benefits later." Chuanjin. Chopper 345 sent another message to the group. "Chuanjin? Fuck." This time, everyone who received the news immediately quietened down. Hearing the 3 words Quanjin sect, everyone felt a toothache. Damn it, why are there these guys everywhere? There were 2 Grandmaster-level blacksmiths in the game, and they were both from the Quanjin sect. Was there any justice in this world? This was too infuriating. Of course, even though everyone was angry, most of them were still calm. The Chuanjin sect could be said to be notorious in the game. This group of bastards was originally a group of roving bandits in the game circle. Not only were their characters wretched and obscene, but they were also very strong. With the addition of Wang Yu, their strength increased by leaps and bounds. It was as if they had a weapon of mass destruction, wherever they went, they would wreak havoc. They would destroy everything in their path and cause chaos in the game. This was especially true for Yu Huiqing. Even a large guild like the Blood Alliance was taken care of. It could be seen how difficult it was to deal with these bandits. As the saying goes, good shoes don't step on smelly dog shit. Even if you won, you wouldn't gain anything from being enemies with this group of people. If you lost, not only would you lose things, you would also lose face. Normally, no one would provoke them. Who would be afraid of them provoking you, let alone provoking you? Any guild with a bit of intelligence would be too lazy to provoke such a dog skin plaster. As long as you worked hard, you would eventually become a grandmaster blacksmith. However, if you provoked Chuanjin, wouldn't you lose more than you gain? Therefore, after hearing Chopper 345's words, most people chose to give up. However, there were all kinds of birds in a big forest. There were many people with low intelligence who tried to poach people from Chuanjin. Chopper 345 decisively rejected all messages from strangers. Chopper 345's decisiveness caused those who didn't know what was good for them to be shut out. At the same time, the news of Chopper 345 being a Chuanjin player spread like wildfire. News spread extremely quickly on the internet. It didn't take long for everyone to know the background of this new Grandmaster blacksmith. The Quanjin sect also became popular again. Since the launch of Rebirth, the most popular guild was Chuanjin. The unbeatable Grandmaster of Combat, the champion team of the professional league, and even the first player to break away from the control of the faction were all from Chuanjin. Now, even the only two Grandmaster blacksmiths in Rebirth were Chuanjin players. F***CK. Could it be that the Chuanjin sect was the strongest sect in Rebirth? However, when everyone found out that the so-called Chuanjin was a small guild with less than 20 people, their worldview completely collapsed. Thinking about it, it made sense. To move unhindered, if Chuanjin was a top guild with 300 main cities and millions of players, it wouldn't be surprising for them to have 1 or 2 experts. If there were a lot of people, there would always be a few outstanding people. However, so many powerful people came from a small guild like the Quanjin sect, which had less than 20 people. This was somewhat unbelievable. This was equivalent to saying that all the scientists in the textbooks had graduated from the same class, and their teacher was called Immortal Iron Ox. Even if this was true, it still sounded like a dream. All in all, Chopper's rise to fame this time allowed the players in the game to have a new understanding of the Chuanjin sect. They now knew that the lousy Chuanjin sect, which was secretly cursed by the players, was actually such a terrifying existence. No wonder these people were fearless in the game. It seemed like it wasn't without reason. As the saying goes, birds of a feather flock together. The famous people in Chuanjin were all great experts, and those who didn't have any fame were probably not weak either. However, what everyone did not know was that the high and mighty experts of the Chuanjin sect were currently surrounding Comrade Lao Wang like naughty children. Their eyes shone as they impatiently shouted, "Uncle Wang, send us the attributes of the equipment." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.